Other people's love lives. Other people's love lives. After confirming that eunuch Qi had left with his procession, Chen Chuxiu called out the door, "Why haven't you invited them in yet?" Senior Minister Chen curiously looked up and saw a girl dressed in plain clothes enter the room. She was shrouded in a fairy-like aura, as she was beautiful but not glamorous and charming but not vulgar. It was Princess Zhenjiang. He quickly stood up, using the bedside table for support. Yu Fu saw this and quickly stepped forward to stop him, but Chen Chuxiu was a step faster. "Father, Princess came to visit you. If you try to be too courteous, wouldn't it cause Princess to feel guilty?" Chen Gulao shot an unhappy look at him. You really? I have never seen anyone as rude as you. Do you think that you could get away with not saluting His Majesty by claiming to be ill?" Chen Chuxiu's brow twitched. It really was hard to say on this matter. On the contrary, Yu Fu felt a bit of admiration for this sort of attitude and hurriedly said, "Senior Minister Chen absolutely must not be overly courteous. I came to make a request. If Senior Minister's illness worsened because of a matter of getting up to salute, it would be detrimental for me." Chen Gulao knew that Yu Fu was not like the usual domineering and arrogant princesses, thus he obediently sat back down. "Princess, please tell us what your request is. This subject will not avoid anything." Yu Fu had previously come to check on Chen Gulao and knew that he was a loyal subject. He was full of admiration for people like Ji Daogong and Gu Huaijiang. Chen Chuxiu looked laid back and playful, but he had an air of being able to distinguish right from wrong. She let out a sigh. "Senior Minister has not fully recovered, so I should not have come to disturb him. It's just that the matter of the cabinet is extremely important." Though Head General managed to convince His Majesty to abolish the Prime Minister's position, people with keen intuitions can tell that the position of leader of the cabinet will be given to Yin Shuo. Chen Gulao slightly nodded. That is indeed the case. Fortunately, Marquis Gu was present and able to convince His Majesty to abolish the Prime Minister's position and establish the cabinet. Yin Shuo will be pressured by the older officials when he is the leader of the cabinet, and that's better than allowing him to monopolize the power. Though this official does not know why the late emperor no longer trusted him, the late emperor was a wise ruler. There had to be a good reason for him to not trust Yin Shuo. He did not know the underlying reason, but Yu Fu did. Yu Fu pursed her lips. She did not plan on telling him the situation, but Chen Chuxiu said, "Father doesn't know?" Based on the various attempts that Yin Shuo made to disrupt the creation of the cabinet, it's clear that he is not a righteous person. As someone who is willing to use their own younger sister as a honey trap, is he worthy of being the Prime Minister? Chen Gulao did not want to bring up this matter. Yu Fu was still a young girl who had yet to marry, and it was not good to let her listen to this sort of thing. Who knew that Yu Fu would just smile? "I already knew about this matter. Yin Shuo is not a virtuous person, however, his younger sister is a kind person, and she is my friend." Chen Gulao seemed to have something on his mind. "The reason for Princess' visit today, is it related to the matter of the Empress position?" It could be said that it is, but it could also be said that it isn't. Yu Fu said, "There is no room for negotiation on the matter of being appointed Empress. It's not just me, but the entirety of Marquis Gu's manor will also refuse to accept it. But in the end, this is something that pertains to our manor. Yu Fu does not dare ask any other lords for help. I just hope that Senior Minister can quickly recover and return to the cabinet to unite the other ministers. Don't allow Yin Shuo to do anything bad." Chen Gulao suddenly remembered back when Yu Fu had set out for the border on her own. She saved tens of thousands of soldiers of the Gu family's army. After returning to the capital, the first thing that she did was summon the general responsible for maintaining order in the capital and the governor of Linen. It was done to come up with a plan to restore peace in the capital. Though she was not of the late emperor's blood, she was concerned about the well-being of the citizens. She far surpassed any other princesses and even the princes. Even he felt a little ashamed. When he was 14, he had also been like Chen Chuxiu, neglecting his studies to go out and fool around. Chen Golao looked at Yu Fu in a slightly different light. Princess, words are too kind for this subject. Returning to the cabinet to help guide the cabinet is not just beneficial to Princess, but it is something that this subject should do. This subject wants nothing more than to return to court for fear of His Majesty being misled by Yin Shuo. Fortunately, I heard that he also hurt his legs and has not been able to attend court. When Chen Golao brought up Yin Shuo's injured leg, Yu Fu was stunned. Only now did she understand how Gu Huaijiang was able to convince Ning Qingji. Based on Yin Shuo's eloquence, if he had been present at that time, he would not have allowed his power to be shared with others. It turned out that he really did hurt his leg that night. The blood on the rockery did belong to him. She suddenly felt an indescribable feeling, thinking back to Yin Shuo's parting figure and how he had left slightly hurriedly while pretending to be fine. He had forced himself to endure the pain and pretend that he had not been injured in hopes that she would not blame herself. Princess. Chen Golao called out to her a few times before Yu Fu came back to her senses and waved to the door. Yaolan entered with a small brocade box. Yu Fu handed the brocade box to Chen Golao. This is a secret medicinal pill from Immortal's Valley. Master made it himself, and it is used to regulate breathing and heart rate. It will be very effective in treating senior minister's condition. Upon hearing that it was a medicinal pill made by Sun Qi, Chen Golao and Chen Chuxiu wore solemn expressions. Chen Golao hastily tried to decline. A medicinal pill made by the deity of medicine himself must be extremely valuable. Back when the late emperor fell ill, we did not see the deity of medicine give him a medicinal pill. How could this subject dare to be so arrogant as to accept? Chen Chuxiu also said, "Father, and I accept Princess' kindness, but father is right. This medicine is too valuable. It would be better if Princess kept it." Yu Fu did not leave any room for negotiation, placing the brocade box on the table and pushing it toward Chen Golao. Medicine is meant to be used by people. In a doctor's eyes, all lives are equal. There's no such thing as arrogance. In the case of the late emperor's illness, there was no need for a medicinal pill to treat his illness. If not for his assassination, he would have lived much longer. Senior minister's illness is different. It doesn't look severe, but it requires proper treatment. For the sake of preventing Chen Golao from refusing further, Yu Fu decided to stand up. "I have caused a disruption for senior minister, so I will be leaving first." Chen Golao wanted to get up to send the guest out, but Yu Fu walked out without giving him a chance to. He had no choice but to have Chen Chuxiu go out to send her off. Chen Chuxiu accompanied Yu Fu to the front gate. Along the way, he said, "Princess, such a great favor cannot go without thanks. When my father has recovered, I will personally visit you to give my thanks." Yu Fu stopped in her tracks and turned back to look at him. "Do you know why I came here on my own today without bringing any guards from Marquis Gu's manor?" Chen Chuxiu froze, understanding what Yu Fu meant. Princess is hoping to keep Marquis Gu's manor and the Qin manor from being entangled. It's the opposite. Yu Fu said, "Right now, I do not hope for any of the moderate officials in court to become entangled with Marquis Gu's manor. His Majesty is highly opposed to the cabinet, and the foundational reason for that is that he does not want to have anyone oppose his decision to appoint an empress. Marquis Gu's manor has been repeatedly suppressed, and head general has lost a considerable amount of power. We still don't know what His Majesty might do in the future. I have said before that this is Marquis Gu's manor's business, and I don't want to implicate anyone who is innocent. This is true regardless of whether it's you, your father, or Lord Ji." Chen Chuxiu looked at the beautiful adolescent girl standing before him. Her bright eyes were as clear as mountain springs. It was such that anyone who saw them would be able to see to the bottom, but it also felt as though they could never truly see through the depths. As a child of an official, he despised court intrigue. As a result, he had been pretending to be a playboy to stay away. He never expected that he would see a girl like Yu Fu in his lifetime. She would rather be with Gu Shubai than be appointed to the position of empress. She would rather have Marquis Gu's manor bear the entire brunt of the guilt for refusing an imperial decree than implicate others. This kindness and sincerity moved him. He subconsciously eased his tone. Most of the officials oppose appointing you as empress because the engagement between you and Marquis Gu's heir was a result of the late emperor's decree. However, did Princess know that some of the officials that do not oppose His Majesty are not doing it for the sake of kissing up to His Majesty? Yu Fu was puzzled and said, "Then what is the reason?" "It's because it's as if Princess was born to be an empress, showing concern for the country and its people." For a moment, even I could not help but think that if Princess became the empress and assisted His Majesty, it might be possible that Eastern Ling could be saved. When Chen Chuxiu said this, he could not help but laugh and cup his hands toward Yu Fu. "Princess, please forgive me. I know that I should not be saying this sort of thing." Yu Fu remained silent for a moment. "It's fine. I know that you are just saying that there was such an explanation and do not harbor any ill will. It's just that you should know that there is no such thing as suitability when it comes to emotions. I do not love His Majesty, so even if I did become the Empress, I could not force myself to dedicate myself to His Majesty. When it came to emotions, there was no such thing as suitability." When Chen Chuxiu heard this, it was as if he had suddenly been filled with wisdom. In an instant, he felt a joy from finding an understanding companion. He warmly looked at Yu Fu. "Princess is right. There isn't any business of suitability. You like whom you like, so who can say that people must marry people who are of a similar status? Princess' words have resolved a worry that has plagued me for a long time. Many thanks, Princess." He respectfully cupped his hands and bowed deeply, and Yu Fu did not know whether to laugh or cry. Chen Chuxiu's actions were completely in line with her intentions. In the 2 times that he had met her, she had seen him either forego any salute or perform this sort of grand salute. She smiled and said, "Young Sir Chen, how do you want me to respond to this sort of courtesy?" Chen Chuxiu raised his head and was a little embarrassed. With a faint smile, he said, "There was never any need for you to return the salute. In truth, my salute was not just in response to Princess' words. There is one thing that I would like to ask Princess for help with." Yu Fu said, "Young Sir Chen, please go ahead. Since Princess knows about what happened between young Miss Yin and me, I will keep things brief. I was rude to young Miss Yin that day. The truth is that I was just wanting to vent from Miss Yao Yu and had no intention of being rude to her. Even if Yao Yu did not arrive when she did, would have stopped myself. Does Princess believe me?" Yu Fu burst out laughing. "Naturally, I believe you. It's not just me. I know that Ji Yao has someone that she likes, and she has maintained her purity for him. She approached you because she was forced to do it. If she had not guessed that you did not have wicked intentions, she would surely have come to get revenge against you." Chen Chuxiu let out a sigh. Young Miss Yin is an intelligent person. It's no wonder Princess praises her so highly. I was the one who was rude back then. I hope that Princess will pass along my apology to her the next time that you see her." Though he said this, he still had a gloomy expression. Yu Fu tentatively said, "In truth, the one that you are more worried about is Yao Yu. When I spoke about how there is no such thing as suitability when it came to emotions, you were so elated. Thinking about it, you there had to be someone that you liked that others might think was not suited to being with you." Chen Chuxiu knew that Yu Fu and Yao Yu were very familiar. He had wanted to say a few words, but after opening his mouth, he swallowed his words. He shook his head. "Forget it. I, Chen Chuxiu, want to pursue a woman. Is there a need to ask Princess for help?" Right now, the most pressing matter is for the cabinet and His Majesty to reach a resolution. Once the situation in court returns to normal, I will do my best to have Yao Yu marry me. The corner of Yu Fu's lips curled up. Who knew that the infamous playboy of the capital would have this affectionate side? But Gu Jiugu was the one that Yao Yu liked, and Yin Jiyao was mixed in there too. Yu Fu looked at him a little sympathetically. He wanted to marry Yao Yu, but there was a long way to go. Yu Fu left the Qin manor and left for Ji Daogong's manor. After that, she went to visit a few other senior ministers before returning home. While returning to Marquis Gu's manor, someone carrying a lantern could be seen waiting at the entrance to the road. The faint yellow light was particularly warm. Yao Lan lifted the curtain, and Yu Fu looked outside. Following this, she gave an order to the driver, "Stop the carriage." "Young miss, it's hard to move in the snow. Do you really want us to stop here?" After asking to make sure, the driver heard a muffled response from inside. Immediately after descending from the carriage and placing a step stool, Yu Fu stepped out of the carriage. They then saw the faint yellow lantern slowly draw closer. "Yao Lan, you guys can go back to the manor first. I will go for a walk around here." Yao Lan stood on tiptoe and looked at the person carrying the lantern. That person was tall and handsome, and the light from the lantern reflected off of his cloak, giving him an elegant appearance. She had a faint idea of who that person was and gave up on trying to dissuade Yu Fu. She returned to the carriage and returned to the manor with the carriage driver. Yu Fu walked toward the lantern and reached the person carrying the lantern a short while later. When the two were 5 paces away from one another, they exchanged a look and smiled. At almost the exact same time, the two started walking toward each other. "Eldest brother, it's cold outside. Why were you standing here? You went out on your own today, and I was worried. I wanted to come out to receive you and somehow ended up all the way out here." Yu Fu could not help but smile. Gu Shubai raised his hand and wrapped his cloak around her with the white fur lining completely shrouding her small face. The two walked side by side, leaving 2 sets of neat footprints in the snow. All of this was illuminated by the gentle light radiating from the lantern. "Father and the others are waiting for you to eat dinner. The hamlet delivered some wild animals today. Among them was a small white fox that seems to be exactly like Pang Jiu when it was little." Yu Fu hastily said, "It won't be eaten, right?" Gu Shubai laughed and patted her head. "We know how much you love Pang Jiu. Who could bring themselves to eat it? It's already been sent to the western wing to play with Pang Jiu. You will be able to see it when you get back." A large white dog and a small white fox, with those two being brought together, who knew just how fun it could be. Yu Fu knew that he was trying to cheer her up, thus she spoke on some fun things to try and make him feel more at ease. "On my trip to the Qin Manor, I had a chat with young Sir Qin. Eldest brother would surely never expect that young Sir Qin actually likes Yao Yu and wants to marry her." Gu Shubai played along, showing interest. "Is it the same Miss Yao Yu that gets along with second brother? I heard that second brother is not interested in her, but she is deeply in love with second brother. I fear that young Sir Qin won't have an easy time." Yu Fu asked, "Then does second brother like Jiyao?" She knew how Yin Jiyao felt about Gu Jiugu. As long as she was not directly rejected, she would never give up on Gu Jiugu. Gu Shubai thought for a bit then slightly shook his head. "He has never brought it up. From my point of view, he has some feelings for young Miss Yin. As for whether or not it's to the point of wanting to spend his life with her," his tone changed, as he suddenly pulled Yu Fu into his embrace. Holding the lantern in one hand, he embraced Yu Fu with the other. "You've been so busy during this time, and this is our only time alone together. Yet you want to talk to me about other people's love lives." Velvet Antler Chicken Soup. Velvet Antler Chicken Soup. The next day was the Lantern Festival. It was the first lantern festival since the ascension of the new ruler, and it was livelier than in previous years. For the sake of currying favor with their higher-ups, the lower-ranked officials decorated the capital streets with colorful lanterns. The streets were decorated with lanterns that had designs that had never been seen before, attracting the attention of the young children. Though this cost a large sum of money, put euphemistically, a new ruler should have a new look, thus it was worth spending a bit more money. When word of this reached the palace, sure enough, he smiled brightly. Since the officials have such intentions, we also want to go out tonight to see how beautifully the capital has been decorated. Ning Qingji was in high spirits, but it was not because he wanted to see some lanterns. What he wanted to see was the love and respect that the officials had for him. Eunuch Qi understood what he meant and did not dare try to stop him. Will your majesty be going out to see the lanterns? There will be many people on the streets for the lantern festival. Shall we have the street blocked off, so your majesty can see the lanterns in peace? Ning Qingji pouted, we just want to go out and see our people. If you sealed off the streets, what would there be for us to see? There's no need to block off the street. There is also no need to reveal that we are leaving the palace. We will be going out incognito. Eunuch Qi frowned, a look of bitterness showing through. It was easy to say that he would go out incognito. If he came under threat, would it not be the servants' heads that would roll? Ning Qingji had never been a master who cared for his vassals or servants. This was a problem that became even more severe after he became emperor. Eunuch Qi thought about the arrangements that would need to be made for their trip out of the palace when he suddenly heard Ning Qingji say, "What's the fun in enjoying the lights on our own? Let's go to Marquis Gu's manor and have Yu Fu come with us." Eunuch Qi's face froze, and Ning Qingji turned to look back at him. He awkwardly smiled. From the very beginning, he never thought that there would be a girl who did not want to be empress. As a result, every time that he brought gifts to Yu Fu at Marquis Gu's manor, he would smile and treat her as the empress. It was only at the New Year's Eve banquet that he verified Yu Fu truly did not have such a desire. After seeing Marquis Gu's manner and the other officials oppose Ning Qingji's desire to appoint Yu Fu as empress, he could no longer smile when he saw Yu Fu. He tentatively said, "Your Majesty, the matter with the cabinet has not yet been resolved. The matter of appointing an empress is even more sensitive. If you go and seek out Princess Zhenjiang at a time like this, wouldn't it be a little bad?" Ning Qingji glared at him. What could be bad about it? Wasn't it you who told us that we should try to develop our relationship with Yu Fu and that it would not be good to force her to take the position? Eunuch Qi was rendered speechless. Was now the time for developing a relationship? Ning Qingji snorted. Yin Shuo thinks he's so smart, and he does do a good job of managing the court, but he has absolutely no plan for appointing Yu Fu as empress. Eunuch Qi opened his mouth, but when it came time to speak, he suddenly saw a palace servant come in and report, "Your Majesty, Her Highness Imperial Consort Li has asked to see you." When Ning Qingji heard Imperial Consort Li's name, his head started hurting. What has she come here for? Is the inner palace not large enough for her, so she has to come and seek us out time and time again? Imperial Consort Li was previously the secondary consort of the second prince's manor. Ning Qingji took her seniority into consideration and did not want to make things difficult for her. He just wanted to stay from her. Eunuch Qi said, "Your Majesty, the inner palace is quite empty. Aside from Imperial Consort Li, there are just a few lower-ranked concubines. Her Highness Imperial Consort Li has nothing to do and often uses the other concubines to vent her frustration. Your Majesty's frustration is understandable." Ning Qingji said, "Go ahead, whom does she want us to deal with today? There are only so few people in the inner palace, yet she spends her days cussing out everyone. Once the Empress moves into the central palace, will she still be like this?" The servant below awkwardly raised their head, replying to Your Majesty, Her Highness Imperial Consort Li did not come today to complain. Instead, she came with a food basket. She said that she personally made some supplements for your Majesty. She knows how to make supplements. Ning Qingji recalled Imperial Consort Li's arrogant appearance. He could not imagine her cooking. Back in the second prince's manor, she would not even put her hands fully underwater, yet after entering the palace, she claimed to be the noblest lady in the palace. She was even less willing to lower herself. Why had she suddenly changed today? He casually waved his hand. Forget it. It's rare for Imperial Consort Li to visit the kitchen. Let her in. The palace servant let out a sigh of relief and immediately retreated out of the hall for fear of Ning Qingji changing his mind. If that happened, Imperial Consort Li would vent her anger on the palace servants. Not long later, they could hear the sound of bells ringing, as Imperial Consort Li entered the hall dressed in a gorgeous dress. Sure enough, a palace maid carrying a food basket was following along behind her. This consort greets your Majesty. She elegantly curtsied, her pomegranate red dress flowed to the ground around her. The dress billowed like the rippling surface of a mountain stream in the wind. Ning Qingji frowned. What are you getting dressed so extravagantly for when there's nothing to do? Imperial Consort Li raised her head in shock, her charming smile disappearing. Didn't your Majesty like it when girls dressed extravagantly? Today is the Lantern Festival, thus this consort dressed particularly extravagantly for the sake of not losing to the glow of the lanterns that we will be seeing tonight. What is it? Does your Majesty no longer like extravagant dresses? Ning Qingji stood up from the sofa and did a lap around Imperial Consort Li. Seeing her hair filled with accessories, he became even more displeased. Extravagance is good, but have you considered the time and situation? Have you already forgotten what Princess Zhenjiang said during the New Year's Eve banquet? It has only been a few months since the passing of the late emperor. If you're dressing like this, is the late emperor even on your mind? Imperial Consort Li suffered in silence, thinking to herself that if not for Ning Qingji not showing consideration for the late emperor, how could she dare to be negligent? Now, this was great. The main culprit had turned the question on her. Hearing Ning Qingji repeatedly mention Yufu, her heart soured. Your Majesty listens so closely to Princess Zhenjiang's words. Those that know would say that it's because she is the adoptive daughter of Marquis Gu's manor, but those that don't know would believe that she was your Majesty's true younger sister. Hearing that not only did she not admit her wrongdoing, but she actually dared to shine a light on his own actions, Ning Qingji's eyes immediately lit up, and he stepped forward to strike her. Imperial Consort Li covered her head and shrank back, bowing to plead for forgiveness. Ning Qingji retracted his hand. What do you know? Yufu is not our true younger sister, but she is even more important than our true younger sister. She is the future empress, while you are just a consort. We will not tolerate you as empress. Do you understand? Yes, this consort understand. Imperial Consort Li verbally accepted this, but, after standing up, she muttered, she isn't even the empress, yet your Majesty protects her like this, not even allowing anyone to talk about her. If she really does become empress, would there even be a place for this consort? Ning Qingji was all too eager to rip her mouth from her face. If you dare to talk about her again, we will have you thrown in the cold palace. Do you believe that or not? Imperial Consort Li pursed her lips, as tears welled up in her eyes that were caked with makeup. She cried, Your Majesty. This consort has been with you since you were just the second prince. How can you be so ruthless? Ning Qingji sat back down on the sofa. All right, stop crying. Quickly come and sit down. We will take a look at the supplements that you made. Imperial Consort Li immediately smiled. This consort knew that your Majesty was just trying to frighten this consort. Saying this, she removed her silk slippers and climbed onto the sofa. Once the palace maid brought out the lunchbox, she personally removed the lid. The aroma of velvet antler chicken soup filled the air. He looked up, and Imperial Consort Lee smiled ambiguously. Humph, humph. He covered his mouth and dryly coughed. Why drink something like this in the middle of the day? Upon looking up, he found that Eunuch Chi and the others already had their heads down and were pretending to not see anything. Imperial Consort Lee brought the lunch box over to him. What is your Majesty worried about? There are only a few pieces. It will be fine. Ning Qingji was skeptical but received a spoon from Imperial Consort. After prodding around with the lid, sure enough, there were only a few slices of velvet antler. He was finally relieved. You've been considerate. Imperial Consort Lee smiled delightedly. Nobody knew that she had placed half of a velvet antler while cooking the soup and pulled the antler out after the soup had been cooked, leaving just a few slices in the soup. She took the opportunity to say, Your Majesty, this is Your Majesty's first lantern festival since ascending the throne. All of the lanterns have already been hung up in the palace. How about this consort bring some wine and accompany Your Majesty to the Imperial Garden to take in the lanterns? It turned out that she had personally gone to the kitchen to prepare this soup for this reason. Ning Qingji drank the soup and did not bother raising his head. We will be going out incognito tonight. We heard that the lanterns outside of the palace are even prettier this year, thus we will be going out to take a look. Imperial Consort Lee happily said, Very well. This consort will accompany Your Majesty out of the palace to admire the lanterns. Since coming to the palace and since becoming Imperial Consort Lee, this consort has not been out of the palace. Ning Qingji's hand froze. Putting down the spoon, he picked up a handkerchief. There's no need for you to come. We will be going to Marquis Gu's manor to admire the lanterns with Yu Fu. It won't be convenient if you come along. It was Yu Fu again. Imperial Consort Lee's expression immediately turned ugly. Your Majesty. This is it. Now that you have your future empress, you no longer want this consort. This consort has accompanied you for so many years. When it comes to seniority, this consort came first. Ning Qingji picked his ears and gave Eunuch Qi a look. You have already said this sort of thing so many times. We only conferred you the title of Imperial Consort on account of how long you have been at our side. What are you using to compare with Yu Fu? Before Imperial Consort Lee married him, she had also been the young miss of an official's family. Having been called useless, she immediately refused to let go of the matter, but Eunuch Qi quickly stepped forward and said, Your Highness Imperial Consort Lee, please go back. His Majesty has already drank the soup that you prepared and accepted your kind intentions. Some officials will be coming to discuss some matters with His Majesty in a moment. It would be inconvenient for Your Highness to remain here. Saying this, he waved below, and two palace servants stepped forward to escort Imperial Consort Lee out. Imperial Consort Lee angrily slammed the lid on the soup. You only smile at the newcomers and ignore the cries of the ones who were here before. This consort feels so bitter. After saying this, she ran out while wiping away tears, leaving Ning Qingji and Eunuch Qi to look at each other. Ning Qingji picked up the soup spoon once more. Since coming into the palace, her temper has become even more problematic. She needs to learn properly, otherwise, when Yu Fu enters the palace, does she want her to consider the feelings of a mere imperial consort? Eunuch Qi knew that in spite of how much he spoke of disliking Imperial Consort Lee, he still considered their many years of being married. If not for that, he would not have drank the soup that she had made. Your Majesty is right, but this servant feels that Princess Zhenjiang is not someone who would frivolously consider the feelings of others. Don't you feel that Her Highness Imperial Consort Lee is completely incapable of creating any waves in the face of the princess? Ning Qingji thought back on Yu Fu's obedient and gentle disposition. He then thought back on how she had protected Marquis Gu's manor during the previous year's Mid-Autumn Festival's palace banquet. He thought back on her resolute expression when she had refused to be appointed empress. He had clearly been turned down, but he still felt that Yu Fu doing this was also very cute and very beautiful. You're right. Yu Fu looks docile and submissive, but she has a natural nobility about her that is absolutely inviolable. There are times when we feel that when she and Danyang stand together, she is the one that seems more like the daughter of the Empress. Eunuch Qi complained internally. What did it matter if she was the daughter of the Empress or not? Yu Fu could only become the Empress if she was not the daughter of the Empress. Naturally, the status of the Empress was far greater than that of the daughter of the Empress. He cheerfully flattered him, yes, the one that your Majesty has chosen would naturally not be lacking. This servant has felt that Princess Zhenjiang has been noble beyond description from the first moment that this servant saw her. She will surely suit the position of mother of all under heaven. Ning Qingji delightedly looked at him before finishing the soup in the bowl. What are you standing around for? Quickly go and prepare for our trip out of the palace. The most important festival in Eastern Ling was the Spring Festival, but the liveliest festival was the Lantern Festival. There were too many customs and rites during the Spring Festival, and there were many unwritten rules for the common folk. Before the end of the year, it was important to take care of any unresolved problems, such as repaying debts or storing food. As a result, many people were too busy with work to be lively. Only a few firecrackers could be heard over dinner on the night of New Year's Eve. The Lantern Festival was different. For the people who had just escaped the atmosphere created by the Spring Festival, there was a feeling of liberation, and the weather was starting to get warmer. It was the best time to go out and see the lanterns at night. However, even on such a cheerful day, the Prime Minister's manner remained as unaffected as usual. Yin Jiao changed into a set of brightly colored clothes, and the dressing for her wound had been changed to match the color of her clothes. It was able to both cover her wound and look pretty. Leaving her courtyard, she headed for the eastern courtyard. All of the guards of the eastern courtyard were gone. Since the last discussion between Ning Qingji and Yin Shuo's treatment of Princess Danyang had improved significantly. He no longer sent people to keep an eye on her, and he allowed her to move around the manor. Princess Danyang did not care about this treatment because she wanted to take care of Yin Shuo's injury but was still turned away. Danyang. Yin Jiao entered the eastern courtyard and saw that the atmosphere in the courtyard was far better than it was before. With a faint smile, she entered the room to look for Princess Danyang. She found that she was still wearing a set of morning clothes, as she sat at window looking outside. She wore a distant expression and only regained her senses after Diener coughed a couple of times. Oh, it's you, Jiao. The two moved to the inner room to chat, and Yin Jiao said, the guards have already been removed from the eastern courtyard. Eldest brother is no longer as guarded against you. Why do you still look so disheartened and unhappy? Today is the Lantern Festival. Why don't we go out tonight to look at the lanterns? Look at the lanterns. Princess Danyang shook her head, her thin face showing absolutely no joy. I don't want to go. He is no longer guarded against me, but that's just to give face to His Majesty. He hurt his leg to such a degree, yet he won't even allow me to get close to him to try and take care of him. Yin Jiao was stunned. Carefully observing Princess Danyang's expressions, she slowly became more and more puzzled. Danyang, do you really like my eldest brother? I seem to recall that you were very displeased with him on the day of your wedding. After the wedding, he did all of those terrible things to you. How could you? Princess Danyang averted her gaze as if trying to refute what Yin Jiao had just said. Yin Jiao refused to relent, thus she had no choice but to respond, I also do not know why. Before the wedding, the one that I liked was Brother Shubai. As for what happened after the wedding, my feelings for him have not changed. I also do not know when my feelings for Yin Shuo. Do you not hate him for how ruthlessly he has treated you? Princess Danyang laughed, I do. Of course, I do. I hate him to the core. I hate that he took revenge against me. I hate that how ruthless he was with me. That's because I hoped that he would care about me. Yin Jiao finally understood that a girl would not hate someone so lightly. If she really hated someone to the core, it would often be because she also loved that person. If there was no love, where would the hatred come from? She had previously felt that she and Gu Jiugu shared an unfortunate fate, as the two had approached each other with opposed goals. Who knew that she would end up being attracted to Gu Jiugu, as things would get out of control from that moment on. Thinking about it now, Princess Danyang's bad relationship with Yin Shuo was the one that truly should not exist. The two had their own desires, however, they were brought together by the late emperor. As a result, neither side was satisfied with the other, however, they had no choice but to get married. The worst thing about this was that Princess Danyang had done something that should not have been done. As the balance of power shifted between the two, the one who developed feelings first would surely suffer. She suddenly felt a little fortunate. Even if Gu Jiugu did not love her, at the very least, he would not treat her the way that Yin Shuo treated Princess Danyang. Even if she had been disfigured, he would not mock her. On the contrary, he looked out for her even more. She was fortunate. Princess Danyang could not help but wipe the corners of her eyes. Seeing the way that Yin Jiao was dressed, she realized why. Will you be going out with Gu Jiugu? Yin Jiao's face turned slightly red, as she faintly nodded. Princess Danyang grabbed her hand. You will be going out with him, yet you want to bring me along. If I had agreed, would it not have ruined your good time? Yin Jiao quickly explained, don't misunderstand me. I truly did want to go out with you. In truth, it won't just be with him. Yu Fu, the eldest young sir, and the others will also be going. Everyone will be going out to look at the lanterns. I was thinking that since you were familiar with everyone, it was naturally fine to invite you. The eldest young sir. Princess Danyang was suddenly a little flustered. Recalling how she had been when she had first met Gu Shubai, it suddenly felt like a lifetime ago. She faintly shook her head. No, you guys go and have fun. I won't be going out. Tonight is the Lantern Festival. Even if your eldest brother won't see me, as the female master of the Prime Minister's manor, I should stay here. Yin Jiao choked up. The female master of the Prime Minister's manor. It had to be difficult for Princess Danyang for her to still be willing to accept that title. Following Marquis Gu's Manor's customs, Part 2, Marquis Gu's Manor had fallen silent since before the end of the year, and when the new year came, only a few of the closer officers of the Gu family's army visited to pay them a visit for the new year. The scene of a crowded courtyard from people visiting to pay their respects from years past could not be found. Those who feared Ning Qingji and Yin Shuo did not dare visit, and those that did dare to visit were turned away by Gu Huaijiang. Marquis Gu's manor is currently in the midst of a struggle. This marquis accepts your kind intentions, but you absolutely must not become implicated. Gu Huaijiang was not at all concerned about himself. On the contrary, he was concerned about the court officials. This loyalty was moving and also made others feel ashamed. Now that it was finally time for the Lantern Festival, the manor hung up lanterns like in years past. Gu Shubai and the other members of the younger generation would be going out to see the lanterns in linen streets. With this, the manor regained a bit of a celebratory atmosphere. Second brother, when will you be going to pick up Jiao? Seeing that it was getting late, everyone gathered in the western wing, and Yu Fu directed this question at Gu Jiugu. Gu Jiugu said, she said that it would be inconvenient to pick her up from the Prime Minister's manor. She said that it would be easier for her to come here. Fortunately, she is from the Prime Minister's manor, and even if others saw her visiting Marquis Gu's manor, it would not implicate her. Yu Fu nodded a little anxiously. Jiao does not have much freedom in her manor, and we don't know if her father and elder brother will refuse to allow her to go out. Young miss, young sirs, have some tangyuan before going out. Auntie Li, Lian Zhu, Lian Bai, and the other servants came in with tangyuan. Warm and sweet, the group ate in the room while they awaited Yin Jiyao's arrival. Arf! A white blur entered the room upon catching a scent of the fragrance. Gu Hanamo noticed and quickly caught the white blur's tail. Arf arf arf. It turned out that it was the white fox that had been sent in from the hamlet. Yu Fu was raising it with Pang Jiu and had named it Pang Wu. Having had its tail caught by Gu Hanamo, it pitifully brought its front paws together, resembling a person bringing their hands together and bowing. Everyone saw this and laughed, and Gui nearly spat out the tangyuan that he was eating from laughter. He did his best to control himself but still ended up coughing up a sesame seed, which landed directly on Gu Xiang's cheek. The twins immediately started fighting. Waking up from its nap, Pang Jiu looked around its kennel and found that its new friend was missing, thus it moved its round body and started forward on its four legs. Hearing the sound of Gu Xiang and Gui fighting, it looked around the rear corridor and barged in while barking. It could not be said that it actually barged into the room, as its chubby little legs could not move very quickly. Gu Hanamo heard the cry from the other side of the room and placed Pang Wu on the ground. Pang Jiu and Pang Wu came together, as the white blur and fat white blur rolled around together. Gu Jiugu suddenly burst out laughing, "Fifth brother, sixth brother, doesn't this look exactly like when you two are fighting?" Gu Xiang and Gu Yi stared at the two animals. Pang Jiu flailed its short legs for a time before relying on its weight to overpower Pang Wu under its fat butt, and Pang Wu just wailed. It turned out that their form was lacking to such a degree in Gu Jiugu's eyes. The two refused to relent until Gu Jiugu admitted that he had misspoken. Only then did they finally stop. Yu Fu ate tangyuan while laughing, taking quite some time just to eat a couple. She also noticed that Auntie Li had done something interesting with the tangyuan. "Eldest brother, what filling did your tangyuan have?" Gu Shubai said, "Black sesame seeds, while yours had sweet osmanthus." "Second brother, what did yours have?" Gu Jiugu had been busy playing with the two and only now had a chance to look at the tangyuan in his bowl. He picked it up and took a bite. The white ball of glutinous rice revealed a pink filling. It looked to be very appetizing. "Oh, it's a rose filling." Lian Bai was standing to the side, and her face suddenly turned red, as she lowered her head. Yu Fu happened to see her expression and came to a sudden realization. "Yu Fu." A familiar voice came from the courtyard, and Lian Bai immediately picked up the platter from the table. With her head down, she retreated via the rear corridor. Yin Jiao cheerfully walked in, her footsteps brisk. It was completely different from her sick and weak pace from before. Everyone in the room was quite shocked. Yu Fu did not seem surprised. Stepping forward and grabbing her hands, "You finally arrived. What made you so happy?" Auntie Li handed her a bowl of tangyuan, and Yin Jiao sat down without any reservations and started eating. Gu Jiugu could not help but raise an eyebrow upon seeing this. It had not been long since they last met, yet it was as if she had become a completely different person. The sight of her teary expression when he had told her the truth of her heritage was etched into his memories. Seeing her present self no longer fret over trivial matters, she now had more of a bearing of someone from a military family. He felt a strange and indescribable feeling in his heart, as he heard Yin Jiao say, "I was originally planning to climb over the manor's walls and sneak out, but who knew that I would be found out by my father? He asked me where I was going, and I told him the truth. You have no idea how nervous I was at that time. I was thinking that if he did not agree to it, I would question him on why he repeatedly tried to suppress Marquis Gu's manor and why he would willingly watch His Majesty's absurdity without intervening." Gu Shubai and the others were moved by hearing this. Yu Fu hastily said, "He is still your father, after all." How could you speak like that to him? More importantly, I don't think that the previous Prime Minister intended for the situation in court to become like this. At the very least, he was willing to try and persuade Yin Shuo. It's just that it wasn't successful. Yin Jiao smiled and said, "That's right. In the past, I always felt that father and eldest brother were the same. Looking at them now, I don't think that they're the same." Hearing that I was coming to Marquis Gu's manor, father fell silent for a moment before ordering a carriage be prepared to send me here. He even advised me to be careful. The group was even more shocked to hear this. It seemed that a divide had formed between the former Prime Minister and Yin Shuo. Yin Jiao suddenly frowned, so sour. Why is there a kumquat in this tangyuan? She had been eating quite happily earlier, but this one had a very sour kumquat. Spitting it out, she found that the filling was green. It was no wonder that it was so sour. It was clearly an unripe kumquat. Auntie Lee stepped forward feeling a little conflicted. "Young Miss Yin, have some tea to wash out the taste first." How strange, how did a sour kumquat filling get in there? I was clearly keeping an eye on them, Gu Xiang testified on Auntie Lee's behalf. "That's right. All of the ones in my bowl had sweet kumquat fillings. How could there be a sour one?" Yu Fu toward the rear corridor in the direction that Lian Bai had departed and could not help but smile. She stood up and grabbed Yin Jiao's hand. All right, let's not worry about this. Let's go out and enjoy the lanterns." Yin Jiao followed her with a smile, while Gu Jiugu was left behind. His gaze followed Yin Jiao's parting figure with a slightly complicated expression. Gu Shubai suddenly came over and patted him on the shoulder. "In the past, you did not like young Miss Yin. Now that young Miss Yin does not take the initiative to come and get close to you, do you feel a little disappointed?" Gu Jiugu had his feelings exposed but would rather be beaten to death than admit it. How could that be? There are so many girls who are close to me. If I felt disappointed after each of them left, would there be any end to the disappointment? Then what are you staring at her for? Gu Jiugu averted his gaze with a guilty conscience. "I was just curious. When did she become so close to Yu Fu? Doesn't eldest brother feel that every girl that gets close to Yu Fu ends up becoming influenced by her?" Gu Shubai thought for a moment then nodded slightly. "You're talking about how young Miss Yin has become much more cheerful, right? I also feel this way. It's not just her. There's also that princess from Western Kuan. When she first arrived in Eastern Lin, she endured hardship and humiliation. After spending time with Yu Fu, she became much bolder and is no longer as restrained as when she first arrived." Gu Shubai remembered the sour tangyuan that Yin Jiao had eaten and thought to himself that those two were not the only ones that had become bolder after spending time with Yu Fu. It was just that Gu Jiugu did not know. At the beginning of the night, the lights were dim. It was the best time to look at the lanterns. Gu Huaijiang ordered Qi Zhou to send them out. Gu Wenqing wanted to stay in the manor to keep him company, but he was sternly refused. The Lantern Festival does not happen often. You should all go out to play. Steward Qi and I will look at the lanterns in the manor. There's no need for the younger generation to keep us company. As a result, Yu Fu said that she would bring back some of the new desserts that Yushan Building had invented. Everyone said their goodbyes to Gu Huaijiang and then cheerfully set out. Yin Jiao spoke while walking. "Will we be going by carriage? I don't know how to ride a horse." Yu Fu smiled and said, "Our manor's custom for looking at lanterns is to neither ride in a carriage nor ride a horse. The main street is not far away. We will be there after just one street. Look." Yu Fu reached out and pointed, her smile suddenly freezing. Everyone looked in the direction that she was pointing and saw a long procession heading toward Marquis Gu's manor. It lumbered along mightily, and the person walking next to the sedan looked very familiar. Was it not Eunuch Qi, the one usually by Ning Qingji's side. As for the person sitting in the sedan, it was evident without any need for thought. The procession stopped outside of the manor's gates, and eunuch Qi bent at the waist to lift the sedan's curtain. Ning Qingji strode out wearing a set of casual clothes. We came at the right time. You were just about to go out and look at the lanterns, right? Tonight, we shall also adhere to Marquis Gu's manor's customs. We will not ride in a sedan and will walk around to look at the lanterns. The celebratory atmosphere instantly plummeted and hit rock bottom. The cheerful smiles on everyone's faces immediately became stiff and awkward. Dragon and Phoenix are reversed, Part 1. Dragon and Phoenix are reversed, Part 1. Yin Jiao could not suppress a faint sigh. It was the rare Lantern Festival outing, but it ended up being ruined. Ning Qingji's gaze was fixed on Yu Fu from the very beginning, and just as Yu Fu was about to speak, Gu Shubai urgently stepped forward and saluted. This subject greets your majesty. Only now did everyone manage to react, following his lead. They saluted and paid their respects, putting away their frantic expressions. Ning Qingji appeared very happy and seemed to not have noticed that he was not welcome. There's no need to be overly courteous. We came out today for a stroll incognito and wanted to go and see the lanterns with you. Yu Fu, you wouldn't refuse to allow us to accompany you to see the lanterns, right? Gu Yi grimaced. He knew that Ning Qingji had some sort of underhanded plan. Put plainly, he still wanted to make Yu Fu the empress. Gu Shubai furrowed his brow and was about to speak, but this time, Yu Fu rushed to speak up before him. Of course, I won't. However, since your majesty came out incognito, I fear that it would be inconvenient for all of us to travel in such a large group. Why don't we separate into smaller groups? Ning Qingji was all too eager to be alone with Yu Fu. Hearing her say this, he was naturally happy to agree. That's good. We shall go along with your plan. Gu Shubai smiled and said, this subject and third brother will come along with your majesty. This will be able to guarantee your majesty's and Yu Fu's safety. Ning Qingji did not want to walk with him. With him present, would Yu Fu be able to see him? But hearing the word safety, he hesitated for a moment. In the end, he nodded. Very well, you are proficient in martial arts. We trust you. Gu Shubai looked back at Gu Jiugu and said, young Miss Yin is a guest. Let's leave her to go with second brother. Fourth brother, fifth brother, and sixth brother, don't go too far. He quickly made arrangements for everyone, and Yu Fu looked at him gratefully. She knew that he understood her intentions. First, Gu Jiugu and the others did not want to be with Ning Qingji. It would be absolutely impossible to enjoy looking at the lanterns with the imperial procession, and that would ruin everyone's joy. Second, if something happened while everyone from Marquis Gu's manor was present, they would find it hard to avoid criticism. Gu Shubai took advantage of the situation to create an opportunity for Gu Jiugu and Yin Jiao. He also had the steady and understanding Gu Wenqing take care of Gu Xiang and Gu Yi to keep them from causing trouble. Everyone went their separate ways, and they slowly got lost in the sea of lanterns. Since his days as a prince, Ning Qingji spent all of his time proclaiming his nobility, and he had never experienced walking through a crowd of commoners. He found it novel and interesting. It's no wonder you guys like walking to look at the lanterns. When you walk, you can see more clearly, and it's not just the lanterns. Even the joyful atmosphere and cheerful smiles of the citizens are clearer. As the ruler, he did not love his people, however, he subconsciously viewed their happiness as a result of his efforts. Yu Fu followed along at their side and thought back to when they had gone out to see the lanterns during last year's Lantern Festival. At that time, they had also run into Ning Qingji, who was watching from the window of a tall restaurant on the side of the road. No matter how good the view was from there, the scenery would look like a mirage, and it would be hard to get a clear view. It could not compare with walking around on ground level, where they could reach out and touch the lanterns that hung from both sides of the street. Thinking like this, she could not help but reach out and touch a lantern shaped like a gold ingot. The fine tassels brushed against her fingertips. Ning Qingji saw this and thought that she liked this lantern, thus he gave Eunuch Qi a look, and Eunuch Qi immediately stepped forward. This servant will retrieve the lantern for Princess. Yu Fu was stunned. The lanterns hanging on the side of the street were the ones placed by the government, not ones that were being sold by various merchants. How could they be removed so casually? She hastily waved her hand to stop him. No, I don't want this lantern. I just wanted to reach out and touch it. This is a lantern placed by the government, and it should not be removed. There were already some passers-by looking in their direction, and Ning Qingji acted as if he did not notice. What's the problem with one placed by the government? Everything under the heavens belongs to us. Could it be that we cannot take a single lantern? Yu Fu was beyond regretful. Initially, Ning Qingji was just trying to win her favor, but now, he was insistent on taking this lantern for the sake of exercising his imperial might. She patiently said, naturally, Eastern Ling belongs to your majesty, but your majesty, take a look. There is a lantern hanging every 2 feet. If one is removed, there will be an empty spot. Would it not ruin its beauty? Ning Qingji looked along the long street. Sure enough, there were lanterns hanging on both sides at set intervals. They added to their radiance and became the foundation of this sleepless city. Forget it. Since you said it, we won't take it. The group continued forward until they reached a stall that sold lanterns. Yu Fu suddenly remembered that lantern that Gu Shubai had bought her before with the small white dog that resembled Pang Zhou. Who knew if there would be a small white dog design this year? Would it still be made by the same old man as last year? Your Majesty, take a look. This stall has some riddles to solve. If all 5 riddles are solved, they give a lantern as a prize. Eunuch Qi stepped forward first to take a look and returned after inquiring about the situation. Ning Qingji found this very interesting. Yu Fu, with how smart you are, you would surely be able to guess the riddles. Why don't we go and have a try? Yu Fu just nodded in agreement and then turned to glance at Gu Shubai. She thought to herself that there was absolutely no need for her to participate in this sort of game. Gu Shubai would surely be able to answer all of the riddles correctly and leave her with nothing to do. Thinking of this, she could not help but laugh. Ning Qingji took notice of where she was looking and frowned even more. He was very unhappy, and Eunuch Qi opened up a path through the crowd. Master, this way. The people that were pushed aside were quite displeased, angrily muttering, what's going on? Do they not understand the idea of first come first served? We were in the middle of guessing, yet they pushed us aside. Another person tried to persuade them, keep it down. Look at how they're dressed. Going by the way that they are dressed, they do not look like they are from normal families. They look like they come from nobility. The person who had complained earlier unhappily said, so what if they're noble? Brother Wen made this stall to attract intellectuals. Would it bow down to nobility? He made such a beautiful lantern. Not to mention selling it for 5 cents, but it would be worth it if it was sold for 5 taels of silver. These words caused everyone to become interested, as Yu Fu stood on tiptoe to try and take a look. Suddenly, she was pulled into the crowd by a pair of large hands. Turning around, she saw that it was Ning Qingji, and she immediately took a couple of steps back. The crowd was too packed. No matter how she tried to retreat, she remained at Ning Qingji's side. Gu Hanamo frowned and desperately wanted to draw his sword to chop off Ning Qingji's hand, but he was stopped by Gu Shubai. He quietly whispered to him, that is His Majesty. Gu Hanamo pushed his sword back into the sheath. Eldest brother, stop pretending. I know that you want to do it even more than I do. Gu Shubai did not respond. Of course, he did not want to see another man do something to Yu Fu in front of him, but no matter how much they did not want that, Ning Qingji was the emperor. He fell silent for a moment before speaking at a volume that only he and Gu Hanamo could hear. If you can't endure small trifles, you will disrupt the bigger picture. Bigger picture. Gu Hanmo's eyes suddenly lit up. Yu Fu looked at the lantern at the stall. It was different from the other lanterns. The lanterns here were all square and did not have any strange designs. The most intricate part of the lantern was the white band at the bottom. There was a beautiful landscape painting on it and a variety of inscriptions. Regardless of whether it was the painting or the literature, it was an absolute masterpiece. Looking more closely at the contents of the poem, it was even more shocking. A young man wearing a square scarf stepped forward. His face was pale and without facial hair. He had a scholarly aura. He cupped his hands toward the group. These lanterns were made by this untalented one. The words and paintings on it also came from my brush. Today, there are riddles on the lanterns, and you can make a guess for 5 cents. If you guess correctly, you can receive one of this lowly one's lanterns, but, he smiled slyly, as for which lantern, it will be decided by this talentless one. I will see the truth of your character and will choose the lantern that suits you best. The onlookers laughed. That sounds good, but won't it just be that the one who looks more talented will be given the better one, and the ones who look shabbier will be given the shabbier ones? It was initially meant as a joke, but the scholar actually took it seriously and nodded. That's right. That's indeed the case. His honesty provoked another round of laughter. Ning Qingji gave Eunuch Qi a look, and the latter brought out a silver ingot and placed it on the stall. He spoke in a rather arrogant tone. This is 10 taels of silver. It should be enough to guess all of the riddles at your stall. Some people frowned and wondered to themselves, where did such arrogant nobles come from? Did they not know that this scholar absolutely despised those that used wealth and power to bully others? Who knew that the scholar who had set up the stall would continue smiling? Very well, go ahead and make your guess. Eunuch Qi picked up a riddle from the stall. After opening it up, he handed it to Ning Qingji. He then looked at it for a while. 1 point of Zhuge Liang's loyalty, 3 battles between Lu Bu and Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei. Rumors say that there is no evidence of Sima Yi, nor that there were 10 great contributions made by General Zhao Yun. Pick a word. The onlookers heard him recite the riddle and started to discuss it. This is quite difficult. There were so many historical figures being named. Ning Qingji had been wanting to show off in front of Yu Fu, but who knew that he would come against such a difficult question? He had no choice but to give the riddle to Yu Fu and the others. Would you guys be able to guess it? Either way, he was unable to guess the answer. Yu Fu received the riddle and handed it to Gu Shubai and Gu Hanamo. The 3 siblings came together and discussed it in a harmonious fashion. Ning Qingji suddenly felt as if he was the odd one out. Thinking back to the cheerful scene outside of Marquis Gu's manor, he finally realized that he was the one who had disrupted the cheerful atmosphere. This did not make him feel guilty. On the contrary, it made him angry. He was angry that Gu Shubai had Yu Fu, and he was angry that they lived together under one roof as brother and sister. It was natural that they would end up closer. He wanted to think of an idea to create some distance between the two. Your Majesty, we have found the answer. Gu Shubai quietly said this and quickly handed the riddle to him. He then spoke in a loud voice. It's the word strategy. Strategy. Before Ning Qingji could react to this answer, he heard the scholar loudly applaud. This young sir's answer is correct. It is indeed the word strategy. Brother Wen, where did this answer come from? Some people from the crowd were also puzzled, and Gu Shubai looked at Yu Fu with a smile. Yu Fu said, actually, in this riddle, Zhuge and the other names are just there to mislead you. The truly important matters are the first few words of each line. 1.3 and rumors form the side of the character, while 10 is the main character. All of that put together forms the word strategy. So it was like that. The crowd had been enlightened. This young sir and young miss really are smart. They were able to find out the answer so quickly. Gu Shubai and Yu Fu smiled at the crowd. In the crowd's eyes, these two were a match made in heaven. In Ning Qingji's eyes, however, they were just annoying. The people who had been pushed aside by Eunuch Qi happened to be watching this from the side. Some people with power and influence are trash. If you don't have the ability to figure out the riddle, what did you come here for? You're just making a laughingstock out of yourself. These words drew laughter from the crowd, and Ning Qingji's face turned bright red. Eunuch Qi shouted, "Impudence! Forget it. There's no need to lecture them." Ning Qingji was all too eager to reveal his identity to frighten these commoners, but it was not safe, and he was worried that rumors would spread that he was lacking in intellect. In that case, it would be better to not reveal his identity. He lowered his voice and spoke to Yu Fu and the others. Yushan building is just ahead. We will go there to wait for you. Come quickly. Yu Fu did not seem affected. Very well. Please enjoy the desserts, Your Majesty. You must be tired after walking for so long. Ning Qingji slinked off with Eunuch Qi, as the one called Brother Wen brought out 2 lanterns that he had made himself. He handed one to Gu Shubai and one to Yu Fu. This one has been very fortunate to have been able to see such capable and virtuous people. Your character, too noble to say, too noble to say. Gu Shubai smiled and received the lantern. Then the young sir that just left, are you unable to see his identity? To say that their identity was too noble to say, who could be nobler than the emperor? The scholar surnamed Wen disdainfully said, though he is noble, he is exceedingly vulgar. There's no need to talk about him. Please take a look at the lanterns that you were given. Do you like them? Gu Shubai looked down and looked carefully. He saw that the lanterns that he and Yu Fu had received were different. His lantern had a phoenix bathing in flames with a brilliant piece of literature written on it. Wings could be seen on the edge of the golden basket, as the wudong tree's branches lay barren in winter. The sons of the 5 greats covet literary greatness, with paintings and beautiful women embroidered on their clothes. Drinking and eating at the top of the mountain, descend down through the smoke to the forbidden city. Once floating through the skies like a cloud, now the golden feather is a key to the tower of the divine. Gu Shubai contemplated the meaning of this poem. This poem spoke of the return of the phoenix. It conveyed a sadness that created a strange feeling in his chest. For a while, he could not figure it out, thus he looked at Yu Fu's lantern. It was even more elegant and intricate than his own. It had a painting of a golden dragon coming out of the clouds and soaring through the highest heavens. The inscription read, "Candlelight illuminates the secluded capital, as a young phoenix writes up a document in the southern palace. The western capital sits on the river bank, while the eastern capital is present on a river map. The dragon's flame changes the path of the stars, as the clouds are elevated above Dinghu. Hopes of encountering a saint on the trip, as morning dawns on the palace." What a good poem! Gu Shubai could not help but proclaim his praise. The poetry was magnificent, and it left people daydreaming about the greatness of the Qin and Han dynasties, but his lantern had a phoenix, while Yu Fu's lantern had a dragon. Were they meant to be the other way around? The scholar with the surname Wen laughed cheerfully. All of my life has been devoted to these 2 poems, and I have been waiting for you 2 in particular. Today, I have finally met you 2. After saying this, he adjusted his clothes and bowed 3 times to them. This left the 2 of them feeling rather puzzled. The spectators laughed and provided them with an explanation. there's no need for you two to worry about it. Brother Wen has always been mystical. There's no need for you two to take it hard. He doesn't have any ill intent, so don't worry. That's right, that's right. He once said that he descended from the heavens. Who would believe him? Yu Fu looked down at their lanterns. I feel that he had a point. He wasn't trying to deliberately make things unclear. After bowing to them, the scholar surnamed Wen ignored them and started to put things away. An onlooker shouted, Brother Wen, we still haven't guessed yet. Why are you putting things away? I am in high spirits from meeting such noble people tonight and wish to go and have a few drinks. Will everyone accompany me? Let's go, let's go. Some of the younger people in the crowd helped him tidy up his stall, while Gu Shubai and his group headed in the direction of Yushan Building. Before they could even take 2 steps, someone shouted from behind, Please wait. The 3 turned around and saw the scholar come over with another lantern, placing it in Gu Hanmo's hands. He delightedly said, This lowly one was overly emotional just a moment ago and forgot about young sir. I've been rude, apologies. Gu Hanmo faintly raised an eyebrow. We only answered 1 riddle, yet you gave us 3 lanterns. What is the meaning of this? The scholar jutted out his chin, turned around, and walked away. This is something that can't be bought for thousands of gold. I am happy to do it. The country is a result of whose contributions, Part 2. The country is a result of whose contributions, Part 2. The 3 of them held their lanterns and headed toward Yushan Building. On the way there, Yu Fu looked at Gu Hanmo's lantern. Upon looking more closely, she was given a fright. The lantern had a painting of a vast desert and a goshawk that flew into the wind and left a trail of blood behind it. Only after looking more closely did she notice that there was a break in the goshawk's figure. Yu Fu inhaled sharply. Gu Shubai and Gu Hanmo looked at her and finally noticed the intricacies of the lantern. That scholar was truly weird. Why would there be such a mournful scene on a lantern meant for a celebration as joyous as the Lantern Festival? Gu Shubai furrowed his brow. The phoenix on his lantern was already making him feel uneasy, and Gu Hanmo's lantern was even more direct. The sight of it was making him feel uncomfortable. He took the lantern from Gu Hanmo and wanted to throw it into the river, but Gu Hanmo somehow managed to take it back. Eldest brother, don't you feel that these lanterns are inexplicably mysterious? That scholar was quite strange, so I wanted to take it back and slowly examine it. It was because it was mysterious that he felt uneasy. Gu Hanmo insisted on keeping it, so he had no choice but to relent. Forget it, Yushan Building is just ahead. Let's go. Tonight, Yushan Building was far livelier than usual. Immediately after entering, Yu Guan came over to receive them. Young miss, young sirs, the noble guest has already gone up to the private room on the 3rd floor. Yu Guan looked behind them. Did 4th young sir not come out tonight? Yu Fu said, he did. We are walking around separately. He is with 5th brother and 6th brother. Are you looking for him for something? Yu Guan smiled shyly. No, it's that with the bright lanterns hanging outside, I felt that it would be too much of a pity if 4th young sir stayed in the manor. It's good if he came out. Oh right, the chef has come up with a new pastry that you haven't tried yet. I will have them prepare some and have them delivered to the manor. Yu Fu smiled and nodded. Good, there are so many people tonight. It must have been difficult for you. The 3 slowly walked up to the 3rd floor. When they reached the 2nd floor, they heard a cry from the floor above. They're here, they're here. Your Majesty, Princess and the others have arrived. Yu Fu and the others looked at each other. They wondered to themselves if Eunuch Qi was not afraid of the other guests on the 3rd floor hearing him. After arriving on the 3rd floor and taking a look, they found that their concerns had been for nothing. There were absolutely no other guests on the third floor. Ning Qingji had waited on his own for a long time. Seeing Yu Fu finally arrive, he was elated. Don't worry. The guests on the third floor have already been chased away. All of them were given a gold ingot. Even if they did not want to leave, they had to leave. He was accustomed to acting in this way. He would arrive at a location and would take over that place. Even if he was doing this, he was not at all embarrassed to say that he was celebrating with the people. Ning Qingji saw that all three had their own lanterns, but before he could say anything, Gu Hanamo immediately stepped forward and said, "I specifically asked for some more lanterns for your majesty. Does your majesty like them?" Yu Fu also collaborated with him, saying, "That's right. Which one does your majesty like?" Ning Qingji looked at the one that Gu Hanamo was holding. He did not want the one that Gu Shubai held, nor did he want the one that Yu Fu was holding. He had no choice but to accept the one that Gu Hanamo held. Seeing the painting of the goshawk in flight, he felt that it was very grandiose, a grand goshawk soaring through the desert. "We want this one." Saying this, he gave Eunuch Qi a look, and Eunuch Qi immediately received it. He did not look at it very closely, only seeing that the goshawk was flying. He did not notice that the goshawk was covered in blood, nor did he notice the dragon and phoenix on Yu Fu and Gu Shubai's lanterns. If he had looked more closely, he would likely have coughed up blood. Gu Shubai knew very well that he did not look at them very closely, thus he found an excuse to have a waiter take his and Yu Fu's lanterns downstairs for Yu Guan to take care of. This would keep Ning Qingji or Eunuch Qi from suddenly noticing, which would cause more trouble. It was quiet outside of the third floor's private room, and the view was very broad. Ning Qingji sat in the best spot. From that spot, he could see most of the main street. Under the bright lanterns, the main street was as bright as day. Ning Qingji leaned against the railing and looked into the distance, seemingly in high spirits. "My Eastern Ling is the most prosperous country of the three on this continent. As the ruler, we are truly fortunate." He turned to look at Yu Fu. "Yu Fu, this great country, do you not want to share it with us?" The three were shocked, as they finally heard Ning Qingji say it. He had just been rejected by Yu Fu during the New Year's Eve banquet, yet he did not give up and asked Yu Fu face to face. If she had been a normal girl, she might have been frightened by his imperial might and agreed to it. Unfortunately, Yu Fu was not a normal girl. She could not stop the corner of her mouth from twitching. Eastern Ling was indeed the most prosperous of the countries on the continent, but its territory was the smallest, and its military strength was very average. If not for Gu Huaijiang being an otherworldly talent in leading troops into battle, Eastern Ling might have been trampled under Western Kuan's foot decades ago. Where would this splendid country be? In Ning Qingji's eyes, he could leave the country on its own. He just needed to enjoy the privileges of being the ruler, as he completely ignored the contributions made by the present and previous subjects. She suddenly felt a sense of Gu Huaijiang's efforts were not worth it. She also felt that Ji Daogonji, Chen Gulao, and the other loyal subjects' efforts were not worth it. She also felt that it was a pity that the late emperor was not able to leave behind a worthy heir. She solemnly said, "As I see it, the splendid country that your majesty sees is partially a result of the late emperor's efforts." Ning Qingji raised his head to look at her. "Oh. And what about the other part?" He thought that Yu Fu would compliment him on his accomplishments, but Gu Shubai and Gu Hanamo knew that Yu Fu was not that sort of person. They were worried that she would say something that would offend the ruler and cause more trouble. Yu Fu ended up saying it. As for the other part, it would be the late emperor's imperial father, which would make it the imperial family's accomplishments. Ning Qingji's face froze. It was as if a tub of cold water had been dumped on his head. All of his delightedness from earlier instantly vanished. In Yu Fu's eyes, all of Eastern Ling's prosperity as a country was completely unrelated to him. In her eyes, he was nothing as a ruler. Gu Shubai gave Yu Fu a look, but the latter was unmoved, continuing, "Is your Majesty annoyed, feeling that I haven't taken any of your contributions into consideration?" No, we did not mean that." Yu Fu was not afraid of him being annoyed, but he was afraid of Yu Fu being annoyed, hastily explaining what he meant. "Please continue. We wish to listen." Gu Shubai faintly raised an eyebrow. It would have been great if he was as humble when listening to the officials in court as he was when listening to Yu Fu. Yu Fu continued, "Since your Majesty does not mind, I will be so bold as to say it. Please go ahead. The reason that the late emperor was able to take care of the country is partially a result of his mindfulness, respecting the advice of his ministers, and his love of the people. The other part is a result of the country having been prosperous when it was handed to him. It was on this foundation that the late emperor was able to govern the country so well. It's easy to forge a country but hard to protect one. The late emperor was able to protect Eastern Ling's territory, thus he was viewed as a wise ruler." Ning Qingji finally felt that her words were understandable and said, "You mean to say that we and the late emperor are the same? We both inherited the prosperity left from the previous generation, thus we don't receive any of the credit for this country." Gu Hanamo quickly said, "Your Majesty, Yu Fu did not mean, that is exactly what I meant." Yu Fu was ruthless. Seeing Ning Qingji's ugly expression, she insisted on continuing, "It has only been a few months since your Majesty ascended the throne. Not only have you not taken good care of the country left behind by the late emperor, but you have instead made it worse. You have ignored the commoners and officials, you have gone against the late emperor's wishes, and you have done all manners of reprehensible things." She finally sneered, "Your Majesty asked me if I wanted to share the great country of Eastern Ling with you, but that even if I wanted to, I would not have such a luxury. That's because if your Majesty continues to act in such a tyrannical manner, Eastern Ling will fall to ruin." She spoke with force and eloquence, and Ning Qingji's face turned ashen. Gu Shubai subconsciously took a step forward to protect Yu Fu in case Ning Qingji lashed out in anger and did something to hurt Yu Fu. The things that she had just said were what the loyal officials in court wanted to say, however, nobody dared to say them as directly as Yu Fu just had. He felt that the Yu Fu that had cast Kun Wushang out of Marquis Gu's manor had returned. This Yu Fu was much cuter than the Yu Fu that clearly hated Ning Qingji but pretended to cater to him. Impudence. Eunuch Qi's hands trembled in fear. He pointed at Yu Fu but could not speak, only managing to get out that one word. Ning Qingji looked at Yu Fu with his brow tightly furrowed. Her back was perfectly straight, as she was unaffected by Eunuch Qi's reprimand. While doing this, she continued to stare at him. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly saw Gu Hanamo pull out his sword. He opened his mouth in horror. "Your Majesty, be careful." Gu Hanamo thrust his sword forward, but he was stabbing at the area behind him. Eunuch Qi hastily protected Ning Qingji, as he saw 4 to 5 people in black clothes appear on the 3rd floor. That ruler is foolish and incompetent. If you have a conscience, do not stop us from executing the will of the heavens. The leader of the group in black pointed at Gu Hanamo and spoke in a tone used by those from Jianghu. Ning Qingji repeatedly retreated in fear, "Quickly protect us." As members of Jianghu, it would be fine if we could not see this incompetent ruler, but since we saw him, we must carry out heaven's will. If you two will not get out of the way, do not blame us for being ruthless. The opposition rushed forward with their swords, and Gu Shubai and Gu Hanamo met them with their swords drawn. Ning Qingji forced himself to suppress the horror in his heart, moving to shield Yu Fu behind him. "Yu Fu, don't be afraid. We are here. It is frightening because you are here. The enemy is here to kill you. She was a little surprised. Ning Qingji had been cussed out by her, yet he was still thinking of protecting her. This consideration could be considered hard to come by. She helplessly shook her head and spoke to Eunuch Qi, whose legs had become weak from fear. What are you still stunned for? Why haven't you gone down to call for someone? Ha! Eunuch Qi watched the figures clash in front of him, and the path down the stairs was blocked by the people in black clothes. How should he go downstairs? What? Go quickly. Take this opportunity. The 5 people in black were being restrained by Gu Shubai and Gu Hanamo. The people from Jianghu were not weak in martial arts, and they had more numbers. Gu Shubai and Gu Hanamo also needed to protect Yu Fu and Ning Qingji. Seeing that the situation was getting worse and worse, Yu Fu immediately pushed Eunuch Qi down the stairs to look for help, while she pulled Ning Qingji back. Your Majesty, we will jump down from here. Yu Fu pulled Ning Qingji to the railing, and Ning Qingji looked down. Below was a small platform extending from the 2nd floor. Even if they jumped accurately, they would be falling 1 story. He muttered, Yu Fu, this is no good. We don't know martial arts. Yu Fu said, Your Majesty, there's no need to be afraid. When you are in mid-air, just hold your head and start rolling. Like that, you will only have some surface injuries when you fall to the 2nd floor. You will be fine. You jump first. I will jump first for you to see. You will jump. Ning Qingji was still afraid. Hearing that Yu Fu would be jumping first to show him, he tried to stop her, but Yu Fu swiftly jumped down and landed squarely on the 2nd floor's platform. She stood up from the floor and dusted herself off. Your Majesty, quickly jump. Ning Qingji saw that she was fine but still felt a little hesitant and did not dare jump. Suddenly, a sword stabbed at him from behind, and Gu Shubai moved his sword, resulting in the sword stabbing him in the arm. He gained an understanding of why Yu Fu wanted him to jump down. As long as he stayed there, Gu Shubai and Gu Hanamo would be unable to act freely. They would have no choice but to allow the assassins from Jianghu to attack. No matter how strong they might be, they would not be able to hold out for very long. Fine, we will jump, we will jump. Yu Fu, stand aside. He closed his eyes and jumped down as if accepting his fate. When he was in mid-air, he suddenly remembered what Yu Fu had said about holding his head and rolling, but it was too late. He could do nothing but hold his head. Bang! It was the sound of a heavy object falling. Ning Qingji thought that he had fallen all the way down to the ground, and he felt as though his body was about to fall apart. Yu Fu pulled him up, and he cried out like a pig, It hurts. Our whole body hurts. It's just a surface injury. It will be fine. Yu Fu immediately knew the situation upon grabbing his wrist. Without giving him a chance to continue crying about the pain, she pulled him down the stairs and continued to run. The guests downstairs heard the commotion and started running. Yu Fu pulled Ning Qingji along without looking back. He was dragged along by Yu Fu while in pain. Where are we running to? Our entire body hurts and really can't keep running. Are there really no guards on patrol on this street? Yu Fu explained while running, Of course, there are, but Your Majesty, look at the people on the street. No matter how many guards there are, they can't hold back entire crowds. Moreover, those assassins from Jianghu were exceptionally skilled in martial arts, so I fear that waiting for guards would be pointless. Gu Shubai and Gu Hanamo were unable to gain an advantage in the fight, so how could the normal guards have any chance? Ning Qingji looked back. The crowd behind him was a blur, but he could faintly see some people giving chase. Yu Fu, there are people giving chase. Yu Fu quickly looked back. In the crowd, there were people that were not dressed in black clothes but had the same aura as those that were dressed in black, and they were heading in their direction. She looked around and decided to take a risk. Your Majesty, stop running. We can't compete in foot speed against those from Jianghu. If we continue running, he will eventually be caught up to. Stop running. Ning Qingji opened his eyes wide. With his life being threatened, he completely lost his ability to think. Raising his head, he saw that Yu Fu had already disappeared into the crowd. His heart dropped, as a feeling of having been abandoned instantly overwhelmed him. Yu Fu, where are you? A hand reached out from somewhere and ruthlessly pulled, dragging him to the ground. He rolled on the ground and ended up in a dark area. Your Majesty, don't talk. Yu Fu covered his mouth and poked her head out. It turned out that they happened to stop running next to a bridge. The bright lanterns illuminated the street, but the area below the bridge was completely dark. It was most suited to hiding. She had come down first to check out the situation before bringing Ning Qingji down. Ning Qingji finally understood that Yu Fu had not abandoned him. He felt a little more at ease, as he also looked out from behind Yu Fu. Yu Fu pulled back, nearly bumped her head against his, quickly hushing him. They're just outside. Don't make a sound. There were many people holding lanterns below the bridge. They placed them into the water and watched them drift away, as they made wishes for good fortunes in the new year. The pinkish light faintly illuminated the area below the bridge and landed on Yu Fu's face. Ning Qingji looked at her in a daze. If he could escape with his life today, Yu Fu would be the benefactor who had saved his life. His marrying her to repay that debt could not be a better excuse. He suddenly rejoiced. He rejoiced over meeting the assassins today and rejoiced that he had Yu Fu at his side. Thinking like this, the pain from the fall no longer hurt as much. The sound of footsteps approaching the bridge could be heard, accompanied by the faint sound of talking. Strange, we clearly saw them come this way. How could they have disappeared? Could they have mingled in with the group of people placing lanterns in the water? There was a girl with that incompetent ruler, so it's very possible. Let's go and search next to the river. When Yu Fu heard this, she suddenly heard the sound of soldiers and swords accompanied by the sound of frantic footsteps. Ning Qingji was so frightened that his heart was about to leap out of his chest. Yu Fu stood in front of him while holding silver needles. She carefully listened to the sound of the footsteps outside. Your Majesty, it sounds like someone came to save us. Really? Joy filled his chest, and Yu Fu immediately grabbed him. Don't go out yet. Wait for the situation outside to be resolved before going out. Yu Fu did not even bother looking back, did not realize that she was grabbing his chest. Ning Qingji was stunned and just stared at the hand that was grabbing him. He could not stop himself from swallowing the saliva in his mouth. What sort of hand was it? It was white and pure, and it was thinner than a lotus root and more tender than a water chestnut. It was too alluring to look away from. The little girl from Marquis Gu's manor had grown up so gracefully. It made it hard for people to treat her like a little sister. Instead, she became a girl that everyone wanted to dote on. The sound of fighting above came to a stop, and a familiar voice spoke out. It sounded like Gu Jiugu. The assassins have already been captured. Have the soldiers search around for His Majesty and Yu Fu. We must ensure their safety. Yes. This was met by a uniform response. Yu Fu heard Gu Jiugu's voice and finally felt at ease to step out from under the bridge, but was pulled back by Ning Qingji. She was caught off guard and fell into his arms. It was only now that she realized that she was grabbing his collar. Apologies, Your Majesty. Your falling movements were not great, and in my haste, I forcefully dragged you along. It's fine. Ning Qingji looked at her in a daze. his voice a little hoarse. The gentle Yu Fu was currently in his embrace, but he just felt tongue-tied. He completely forgot about his current situation. Yu Fu slightly furrowed her brow, feeling that his expression was extremely odd. She wanted to break free from his grasp, but he was hugging her tight. She immediately became alert. "Your Majesty, let me go." Naturally, Ning Qingji did not want to let go of such a good opportunity, holding tightly to Yu Fu. "Yu Fu, you should understand how we feel about you. We want you to become Empress, but could it be that we have wronged you somehow? Why do you keep turning us down? Your Majesty, let me go first, and then we can talk." Ning Qingji held her even tighter. "No, we will not let you go. Once we let you go, you will immediately run to Gu Shubai's side. We do not want to see you at his side." Yu Fu furrowed her brow more and more. Ever since Ning Qingji had ascended the throne, he had become more and more unrestrained. He became, but he had never done something that would be considered shameful. What exactly was going on with him today? She subconsciously checked his pulse and came to a sudden realization. "Your Majesty, did you eat anything like velvet antler today?" Ning Qingji's vision had been blurry for quite some time. "I drank velvet antler soup." It was just a bit. His face was drawing closer and closer to Yu Fu's face. Seeing that he was about to press against her lips, Yu Fu poked a needle into his chest. Hiss! Ning Qingji immediately let go of her hand. Lowering his head, he looked at Yu Fu in disbelief. "You stabbed me with a poison needle." Gu Jiugu heard the sound coming from under the bridge and led a group inside. He saw a man and a woman under the bridge, and their figures matched Yu Fu's and Ning Qingji's builds. He immediately called out, "Yu Fu, Your Majesty, is that you?" The man turned his head. The light from the torch illuminated his horrified face. It was Ning Qingji. Just as Gu Jiugu was about to step forward, he suddenly saw a slap land across Ning Qingji's face, as Yu Fu kicked him to the ground. "You lecherous wretch! What is the rationale behind taking liberties with a girl?" The one cussing out Ning Qingji was none other than Yu Fu. While cursing at him, she punched and kicked Ning Qingji without any reservations, and Ning Qingji just curled up to protect himself without any consideration for appearances. Gu Jiugu was completely stupefied. Ning Qingji dared to take liberties with Yu Fu. The soldiers from the Gu family's army subconsciously moved to stop that person, but then they were startled by their actions, hastily looking toward Gu Jiugu. They were only concerned with protecting Yu Fu and did not consider that the person being beaten was the current ruler. "What are you looking at me for? Did you not hear what the princess said? The dignified child of heaven took liberties with a girl." No matter how one spoke of it, Yu Fu was in the right. What was wrong with giving him a beating? Gu Jiugu had been wanting to give him a beating, and Yu Fu was finally able to vent on Marquis Gu's manners' behalf. This would keep Ning Qingji from thinking that nobody would dare to oppose him now that he was the emperor. When Yu Fu was about done with delivering this beating, she gave Gu Jiugu a look, and Gu Jiugu immediately understood. "What are you standing around for? Quickly protect His Majesty." The earlier statement had been spoken in a quiet voice, but this order was given very loudly. The soldiers from the Gu family's army immediately rushed forward and helped Ning Qingji up. "Your Majesty, are you hurt?" The city guards that were behind them wanted to apprehend Yu Fu, but they were stopped by the soldiers from the Gu family's army, and they had no choice but to pull back in disappointment. Even if they were 100 times more courageous, they would still not dare to apprehend Princess Zhenjiang. More important, it was still very likely that she would become the future empress. If not for that, how could she dare to do this to His Majesty in front of so many people? Ning Qingji staggered to his feet with help from the guards, his head covered in bruises. "Back to the palace, we want to go back to the palace." Gu Jiugu immediately spoke in a loud voice. "Quickly, escort His Majesty back to the palace." The soldiers helped him leave in a rush, while Gu Gu immediately pulled Yu Fu over to look her over. How did he take liberties with you? Is anything wrong? Second brother, don't worry. Someone had him drink velvet antler soup. They likely didn't know that he would leave the palace tonight, and him coming out ruined their plan. Gu Gu said, while watching the soldiers help him leave. I saw that there was a silver needle stuck in his chest. There isn't any poison on that needle, right? Yu Fu said, don't worry, I know where to draw the line. Right, we're our eldest brother and third brother. Speak of the devil, Gu Shubai and Gu Hanamo rushed over. Just as they reached the bridge, they saw the soldiers helping Ning Qingji up from below the bridge, and his face had been beaten and bruised. Gu Shubai was shocked and said, Your Majesty, what happened? Where's Yu Fu? Did anything happen to Yu Fu? A soldier from the Gu family's army gave him a look, and once Ning Qingji left, the soldier whispered, Young General, don't worry. Young Miss is fine. The injuries to His Majesty's head and face are from the young miss. How could they be from Yu Fu? They all have the same illness, Part 2. They all have the same illness, Part 2. The moon hung in the middle of the sky, and the people who had been admiring the lanterns in the city had returned home. The street was now much quieter. Princess Danyang sat in her room doing some needlework when she suddenly remembered something. Raising her head, she asked Diener, has Ji Yao still not returned? Diener glanced out at the courtyard and found it completely silent. Only the manor's lanterns were shining brightly. I do not think that she has returned yet, otherwise, there should have been some movement. Princess Danyang furrowed her brow. How could she be returning so late? Could something have happened? Diener covered her mouth and smiled. She went to look at the lanterns with the members of Marquis Gu's manor. It might be that she would go directly to Marquis Gu's manor if it seemed like it was getting too late. It's not like she hasn't stayed there before. Princess Danyang heard this and stood up. She wouldn't. If she was not going to return for the night, she would have sent someone to let us know. More importantly, in the past, she was staying in Marquis Gu's manor because she had no other choice. How could an innocent girl casually stay in another person's home? Ji Yao is not someone who is so lacking in propriety. She walked toward the courtyard, and Diener quickly followed behind her. Where will Princess be going? I'm going to take a look at the second gate. If Ji Yao still hasn't returned, send someone to Marquis Gu's manor to inquire. Master and servant walked over to the second gate and suddenly saw a thin, old man in the distance, and he was slowly pacing back and forth. Princess Danyang immediately recognized that it was none other than Yin Yen. She walked over and greeted him, former Prime Minister. Yin Yen cupped his hands. What has Princess come out for? Princess Danyang said, I heard that Ji Yao still hasn't come back and I was a little worried, thus I came out to receive her. Is former Prime Minister also here to wait for her? Yin Yan did not think that Princess Danyang would come out so late at night for Yin Ji Yao's sake. She had a bit of a loving sister-in-law's heart. He cast his cloudy gaze toward the outer study. The lights were shining brightly, but there was absolutely no sign of any movement from Yin Shuo. In his eyes, was Yin Ji Yao still his younger sister? Yin Yan let out a sigh. Forget it. I heard some news that His Majesty was accosted by assassins while out for a patrol tonight. Based on what I heard from the palace servants, His Majesty was with people from Marquis Gu's manor, and Ji Yao also happened to be with them. Princess Danyang was shocked and said, Did anything happen to His Majesty? Did anything happen to the people from Marquis Gu's manor or Ji Yao? Yin Yen said, His Majesty has already returned to the palace. Though he suffered some injuries, his life is not in danger. As for the others, that is less clear. I have already sent someone to Marquis Gu's manor to pick up Ji Yao. Princess, you can be at ease and go back. Yin Jiao had once told Princess Danyang that her father and elder brother were very controlling, very rarely allowing her to go out. They would also make use of her to accomplish some of their goals in court. Yin Yan treated her a bit better than Yin Shua, but it was really just a bit. In essence, they were the same. However, what Princess Danyang saw tonight was an elderly father worried about his daughter, as he paced back and forth in the middle of the night while waiting for his daughter to come back. It was possible that as a person grew older, they would finally realize how important family was, or it was possible that Yin Shua's rebelliousness allowed him to notice Yin Jiao's good points, and that was what made him change. She felt a little uncomfortable, thinking about how she was once doted on by her father emperor but now had nothing. Her voice was choked up. I will wait for her with former prime minister. If Jiao is hurt, I will take care of her with my maidservant. Yin Yan thought for a bit and found this reasonable, thus he did not stop her. Not long later, the sound of footsteps came from outside, as servants led a carriage into the manor. The two immediately stepped forward and saw Yin Jiao step out of the carriage without any injuries. Not only was she not hurt, but she seemed a little annoyed. Jiao, you weren't hurt, right? Why do you look so angry? Yin Jiao saw Princess Danyang first, then saw that Yin Yan was also standing behind her, and she could not help but freeze. Father. Yin Yan slightly nodded, then turned to walk toward the main hall. Since you aren't hurt, let's go inside to speak. Princess Danyang guessed that he wanted to know what happened tonight, thus she went with Yin Jiao to the main hall. The servants brought out 3 cups of hot tea, and after Yin Jiao drank some tea, Yin Yan slowly started speaking. I heard that His Majesty was attacked tonight. Were any of the people accompanying him injured? Who knew what Yin Yan had brought up, but Yin Jiao's recently calmed expression became annoyed once more. No, His Majesty is fine. It's just that Marquis Gu's heir was injured. Princess Danyang was stunned. What injury did he suffer? Yin Yan reflexively looked at her, and Princess Danyang lowered her head and took a sip of tea, realizing that she had spoken out of turn. Yin Jiao said, it was just his arm that was stabbed by a sword when he was protecting His Majesty. There isn't anything serious. When the eldest young sir and third young sir from Marquis Gu's manor were engaged in combat with the assassins, Yu Fu took His Majesty and leapt down from the side of the building and ran away. They then hid under a bridge. At that time, second young sir and I were admiring the lanterns on the main street. After hearing the news, the second young sir immediately gathered some patrolling soldiers and led them to the bridge to fight off the assassins. I didn't expect that His Majesty would actually be in the mood to have such perverse thoughts at a time like that, taking liberties with Yu Fu. Yu Fu could not bear the humiliation and gave His Majesty a beating. I fear that word of this has already spread to all of the city guards. Princess Danyang nearly lost her grip on her teacup. What did you say? Yu Fu. Yu Fu gave Imperial Brother a beating in front of everyone. That's right. How could His Majesty treat the person who had saved him like this? He truly is ungrateful. Jiao. Yin Yan urgently spoke up to quiet her down. Insulting His Majesty in front of Princess Danyang might be a little too outrageous. Since his return from the old home, he noticed that Yin Jiao's temperament seemed to have changed quite a bit from before. In the past, she was a gentle lady, but she was now becoming bolder, and she was becoming more and more lively. This, however, was good too. If she had the same temperament as before, she might spend her days washing her face with tears over the scar on her forehead. If she could live peacefully, that was what mattered most. Yin Jiao stopped herself, and Princess Danyang gave Yin Yan a reassuring smile. Former Prime Minister, there's no need to pay it any mind. Jiao is speaking the truth. Imperial Brother did indeed go too far by doing this. Yin Jiao suddenly said to her, Danyang, do you think His Majesty will punish Yu Fu? I heard that when His Majesty was being escorted back to the palace, his head and face were blue and purple with bruises. If he can't bear the pain tonight, do you think that he will decree for Yu Fu to be apprehended tomorrow? Princess Danyang thought for a bit but did not really know if Ning Qingji would have Yu Fu apprehended. Imperial brother, as the only prince born of the late emperor's empress, has always been pampered. Not to mention being beaten, but there was nobody who dared to lay a finger on him. Yu Fu is likely the only one who has hit him in his life, and she even beat him until he was covered in bruises. Yin Jiao was worried and turned to Yin Yan. Father, help Yu Fu. Don't let His Majesty apprehend her. Can you go into the palace to ask His Majesty to be lenient? Princess Danyang and Yin Yan fell silent at the same time, and Yin Jiao looked back and forth between the two, a feeling of horror welling up in her chest. One of them was an old official who had resigned from office, while the other was a princess that had lost favor. These seemed like lofty positions, but they were already in positions where they could no longer speak up in front of the emperor. Yin Jiao's eyes suddenly lit up. I will go and ask eldest brother. Eldest brother has liked Yu Fu for so long. He will surely help Yu Fu. Princess Danyang rapidly raised her head and looked at Yin Jiao, her eyes full of disbelief. Yin Shuo liked Yu Fu. When did this happen? Why did she never know about this? In her frantic rush to act, Yin Jiao did not notice Princess Danyang's expression, as she was entirely focused on running out. Yin Yan spoke up at this critical moment. Stop. Puzzled, she turned to look back at Yin Yan, and the latter quietly said, There's no need for anyone to plead for lenience for Princess Zhenjiang. This is the true way to help her. Late into the night, the light in Gu Shubai's room remained illuminated. Yu Fu was applying medicine for him. His shirt had been partially removed, exposing a long wound that extended from his right shoulder down his arm. Yu Fu carefully applied medicine to the wound. It's fortunate that while the wound is long, it is not deep. Those people from Jianghu could be considered quite nice, as there wasn't any poison on their swords. Gu Shubai watched her apply the medicine and felt that she was being overly cautious. He could not help but faintly smile. Those people from Jianghu were not weak. At that time, third brother and I needed to protect you and His Majesty, and we needed to deal with them. It was really hard to manage. If not for this, they could not have hurt me. Yu Fu finished applying the medicine and then wrapped it with gauze. After this, she tied a knot that was neither too loose nor too tight. Gu Shubai put his clothes back on. As for you, you gave His Majesty a beating in front of everyone. I fear that word of this will have spread around the entire capital by tomorrow. Based on His Majesty's strong competitive side, he will definitely not give up. Yu Fu smiled and said, You mean to say that he will decree for me to be apprehended? That could not possibly be better. With this, Gu Shubai knew what she was planning, and the two came to an unspoken understanding. You had so many chances to deal with him secretly, yet you insisted on beating him in front of the guards. It was for the sake of giving him no choice but to increase your guilt to save face, isn't that right? Yu Fu nodded. Surely, there will be a decree tomorrow morning. If there isn't, have the Manor's soldiers spread the word. The more people that know, the better. Gu Shubai's eyes lit up. The more people that know, the more His Majesty's image would be damaged. Even if he would be reluctant to blame you, he would have no choice. When that time comes, I want to see what sort of excuse he will use to elevate a girl guilty of committing a crime to the position of Empress. It's just, he hesitated for a moment, and Yu Fu thought that he was worried that she would suffer from being condemned, thus she reassured him, Don't worry. My punches and kicks looked frightening, but they did not land heavily. Even if I am condemned, my life won't be at risk. At the very worst, I will lose my title and my fief, being demoted to a commoner. That is what I wish. Once she was demoted to a commoner, Ning Qingji would have even less of an excuse to name her as empress. Gu Shubai, however, said, "That's not what I'm worried about. I am just worried that Ning Qingji might not punish you. If he really is annoyed with you, I fear that he would have ordered for you to be apprehended when second brother reached you, but he did not do that." Yu Fu furrowed her brow, remembering how he had tried to stand in front of her to protect her when the assassins showed up. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that Gu Shubai was correct. She was so angry that she could not speak properly. It would be bad if that's the case. He won't even run away when given a beating. Could it be that those siblings are gluttons for punishment? Princess Danyang was abused by Yin Shuo, and she clearly had a chance to leave the Prime Minister's manor. However, she refused to leave. Ning Qingji was scolded by Yu Fu first and then he was given a beating. If he still refused to give up on her, he truly would be a glutton for punishment. Gu Shubai patted her on the back of her head, his palms transmitting a calming warmth to her. "Don't be scared. I won't allow you to be taken by another man." Princess Danyang left the main hall's courtyard in a trance. The ground beneath her feet felt like cotton. She recalled the time when Yu Fu first arrived at Marquis Gu's manor. She had treated her like her future younger sister-in-law. Knowing that everyone in Marquis Gu's manor from Gu Huaijiang down liked her, she did not dare to treat her with scorn. This was true even though Yu Fu was just an adopted daughter from the countryside, and the difference between their statuses was as great as the difference between heaven and earth. After realizing that Gu Shubai loved her as more than just a younger sister, even favoring her far more than the princess born of the empress, she started to see Yu Fu as her sworn enemy. After that, Gu Huaijiang engaged the two, and Gu Shubai would rather reject her and marry Yu Fu. She was heartbroken that she was not chosen. Who knew that now, history would repeat itself? Once again, it was her and Yu Fu, and once again, it was the man whom she liked. It was just that Gu Shubai had become Yin Shuo. Yin Jiao said that her eldest brother had liked Yu Fu for so long, but exactly how long was this? If it was from before they got married, why did Yin Shuo marry her? Why would he thank the late emperor during the wedding? Why would he pretend to accept marrying her? Yu Fu, Yu Fu. She did not even have the energy to hate Yu Fu. Her entire body just felt cold. Ning Qingji had said in front of family members and court officials that Yu Fu was the noblest girl in Eastern Ling, casting her, the daughter of the empress, behind her. Yu Fu was the noblest, and she was about to become of age. In court, she had prestige, and she was known by the commoners as Princess Zhenjiang, but who knew Princess Danyang? Spreading gossip. Spreading gossip. She was nothing more than an ordinary woman in the Prime Minister's manor, her beauty wilting like a flower. She was not loved by her husband, and she did not have a father or brother to care for her. She and Yu Fu were previously as different as heaven and earth, and they were still as different as heaven and earth. It was just that she was now the earth. She was just someone that nobody would remember. "Princess, are you going to look for your husband?" Diener quietly reminded her from behind, and Princess Danyang raised her head. She had ended up walking to Yin Shuo's outer study. She stared blankly at the lantern outside of the outer study, and she could imagine the sight of Yin Shuo sitting below a light and reading a report. From time to time, he would stand up and flip through the materials from the past and then pick up a brush to write some notes. It was probably like that, right? She did not know because Yin Shuo never allowed her to enter the outer study. Even if the outer study was available to the officials that frequently visited, she still did not have the right to enter. In Yin Shuo's eyes, it was possible that she was even lower than a common official. Would she be going to look for Yin Shuo? Her footsteps wavered, and for a while, she wanted to ask him to clarify the situation. This would also allow her to give up, but she also wanted to lie to herself. It was too late tonight. Would it not be better to go tomorrow? Diener saw that she was frozen in place and urged, if Princess wishes to see your husband, just go and look for him. If you don't wish to see him, let's quickly go back. What would we do if you caught a cold from standing in the wind? Oh, then, let's go back. We'll come back tomorrow. In the end, she could not summon enough courage, and she turned to return to the eastern courtyard. At the very moment that she left, she understood that the tomorrow that she spoke of would not come. After today passed, she would have even less courage to ask Inshuo. Diener followed behind her and suddenly saw her stop in her tracks. As if possessed, she quickly turned around and ran toward the outer study. Princess. In the outer study, Inshuo was waiting for more news to come from the palace. One aspect of it was Ning Qingji's injury, but the more important aspect was his attitude toward what happened that night and how he planned to deal with Yu Fu. Not long later, the news arrived. Your sir, word has come from the Imperial Physicians Group. All of His Majesty's injuries are superficial. They just look a little frightening, but they aren't serious. This was roughly what Inshuo had expected. Yu Fu was not the type of person that would only speak without acting on it. If she really wanted to hurt Ning Qingji, she very likely could have secretly poisoned him and had him die without anyone knowing how. This sort of loud and showy act was just meant to be seen by others. He could not help but smile. Yu Fu is exceedingly smart to be able to think of this sort of plan to reject His Majesty's plan to appoint her empress, but it's hard to say if His Majesty will act as she hopes. The servant said, based on what one of the eunuchs said, after His Majesty returned to the palace, he did not mention Princess Zhenjiang in the slightest. He did, however, have Imperial Consort Li summoned to be reprimanded. Right now, Imperial Consort Li is kneeling outside of His Majesty's palace to repent. Apparently, she had His Majesty eat something that she should not have, or His Majesty would not have done. Not have done what? The servant knew how he felt about Yu Fu and felt a little troubled, saying, would not have taken liberties with Princess Zhenjiang. That is what provoked the princess' wrath. Inshuo initially thought that it had just been an excuse that Yu Fu had used and did not think that it had actually happened. In an instant, his expression became extremely ugly. The servant lowered his head and did not dare speak when he suddenly heard the sound of footsteps coming from the courtyard. He hastily exited to take a look and found Princess Danyang walking over with her maidservant behind her. Is husband inside? The servant glanced inside first, and Inshuo's expression was non-committal, thus he cupped his hands toward Princess Zhenjiang. Princess, may I ask the reason for coming to look for the eldest young sir so late at night? Based on her previous temperament, Princess Danyang would surely say, can I not come without a reason? But the current her was much less trenchant. She had lost her domineering attitude, and she just smiled and said, Jia just returned, and she told me a bit about what happened to His Majesty tonight. I was thinking that husband would be interested in hearing about it, thus I came here to tell him. The servant glanced inside, and Inshuo faintly nodded. Only then did the servant stand aside to allow her in. Princess, this way. Princess Danyang walked in on her own. Inshuo sat behind the desk and held a cup of tea. He did not even look at her. She looked around and then sat down on a chair to the side. Inshuo spoke without beating around the bush. Jia went to look at the lanterns with Gu Jiugu and the others, right? What did she tell you when she got back? Princess Danyang paused for a moment. Did he not want to see her so badly that he was not willing to even say a few words of greeting? Did he need to get straight to the point? A feeling of sadness filled her heart. Are you also like this when you speak to Yu Fu? Inshuo's hands froze, and he slightly furrowed his brow. What do you mean by this? Princess Danyang forced a smile. It's nothing. I was just feeling a bit anxious after hearing that Yu Fu gave my imperial brother a beating. Ji Yao was very worried. She wanted to come and ask you to plead for Yu Fu, and she said that you have liked Yu Fu for a long time. It turned out that Yin Jiyao had said it. Yin Shuo was unmoved. What else did Jiyao say? For example, what the people of Marquis Gu's manor thought about what happened tonight, or what Yu Fu thought about what happened? Princess Danyang's face was pale. You still like Yu Fu, don't you? You are my husband, and I am asking you if you like another girl, yet you insist on asking me about other things. Only now did Yin Shuo look at her. Could it be that this was the first time that she was finding out that he did not like her? She had endured for such a long time, so why did she suddenly come and ask him this tonight? He impatiently said, "Whom I like is none of your business, in the same way that whom you like is none of my business. If this is all that you had to say, you can leave now." Princess Danyang was stunned. You're still bothered that I once liked Gu Shubai? Yin Shuo ruthlessly cut her off. I don't care. Whom you like is your business. How is it related to me? Are you still unable to understand the situation? I don't have any feelings for you. If you want to live your life peacefully in the Prime Minister's manner, you can continue to be my official wife. If you don't want that, I have some other plans in mind. It turned out that he did not care about the fact that she had previously liked Gu Shubai. Rather, he had never felt anything for her. If there had never been any feelings, where would there be any concern? Danyang sneered, of all the people to like, you chose Yu Fu. She is just a girl raised in the wilderness with an unclear background, yet you all still like her. Gu Shubai likes her, and even you like her. Father Emperor and Imperial Brother both like her. Why is it that all of the things that I like end up being taken away by her? Yin Shuo paused. Mixed in Princess Danyang's rant was the fact that she liked him in the same way that she had liked Gu Shubai. He did not believe it. The things that truly belong to you won't be taken away by others. The things that have been taken away. He stood up and leaned close to Princess Danyang, cruelly whispering into her ear, those things never belong to you. Princess Danyang shuddered. It was as if she had been dunked in a tub of frigid water. It was as if every pore on her body had been closed off. Yin Shuo's gaze pierced her like a cold blade, reducing her heart to a bloody pulp. Her voice trembled. What's so great about Yu Fu? Why do you all like her? Her good points, you wouldn't understand even if you were told. Yin Shuo returned to his seat and sat back down. He no longer looked at her. Servants, come and see the guest out. The servant entered from outside the door. He bowed and then invited Princess Danyang to leave. With a stunned expression, tears welled up in her eyes. The servant stood to the side but did not dare touch her. Yin Shuo continued to avoid looking at her. After a brief pause, the servant awkwardly said, Princess, please don't make things difficult for this servant. Princess Danyang slowly turned around and walked out of the study. Yin Shuo slightly raised his head and saw her corpse-like figure leave the room. He faintly frowned. He then looked back down at his report, but it was hard to say what he was thinking. The next day, Yu Fu woke up first thing in the morning and went out to feed Pan Jiu and Pang Wu herself. Pang Wu, you need to eat a little more and help Pang Jiu lose some weight. Pang Jiu, stop eating Pang Wu's food. Pang Jiu snarled at her with dissatisfaction but reluctantly retreated a couple of steps. Pang Wu proudly stepped forward and happily ate the food that was in Pang Jiu's bowl. With a look of satisfaction, the small, white fox revealed a smile. Yu Fu quickly comforted Pang Jiu, who had been instructed to lose weight. She patted their heads and suddenly remembered how Gu Shubai would often pat her head like this, and she could not help but laugh. Auntie Li entered the courtyard and saw Yu Fu in the backyard chatting and laughing with her animals. Surprised, she said, Young miss, why did you get up so early today? Yaolon walked out of the inner room with a bronze basin. Young miss said that she was worried that she might have to go out later, thus she already finished getting washed up. Auntie Lee looked at the bronze basin. There was still some steam emanating from the surface of the warm water. It was clear that it had already been used. Auntie Lee became even more confused. Why would young Miss need to go out so early? The roosters haven't even started crying. Yu Fu finished feeding Pang Jiu and Pang Wu and then walked over to Auntie Lee and said, I am worried that I won't be able to return for a long time, so I got up a little earlier. The words, won't be able to return, gave Auntie Lee a fright. Could it be that His Majesty intends to punish you because of the beating that you gave him last night? Who can say? Yu Fu did not look worried in the slightest. On the contrary, she looked a little excited. I just hope that His Majesty does punish me. Oh right, how many people went out early to spread the rumors? The latter half of the sentence was addressed to Yao Lan, and Yao Lan looked outside the courtyard. She happened to see Yan Jing run in. Auntie Lee saw him run in without any consideration for propriety and furrowed her brow. She thought to herself that he was not observing the rules at all. This was a young lady's courtyard. Was this a place that a man could casually stroll into? Yu Fu smiled and stepped forward to receive him. Yan Jing panted and said, Young miss, don't worry. Everything has been arranged. Our people went to the morning market, spread the word, and everyone in the streets is now discussing it. Yu Fu laughed. The morning market. Only you guys could think of something like that. When it came to the best place to spread rumors, aside from tea houses and restaurants, would the best place not be the morning market? The housewives that loved gossiping the most would go and buy vegetables at the morning market. This gossip would spread rapidly until everyone in the capital knew. Auntie Lee was confused. Young miss, what are you talking about? Yan Zheng was quick to speak, opening his mouth and saying, It's the matter of the young miss giving His Majesty a beating. Young General said that the head of the city guard, Mo Huangsha, has benefited from the young miss' kindness and would not allow his subordinates to speak poorly of young miss. As a result, we had some people dress up as city guards to spread the word. Very soon, everyone in the capital will know that young miss hit His Majesty. Auntie Lee's eyes rolled back, and she nearly passed out on the spot. Fortunately, Yao Lan was quick to act and supported her. She pointed at Yan Jing and sputtered for a while, You guys, isn't this just making young Miss Guilt seem worse? This is bad, this is bad. What should our young miss do? Yu Fu left Yao Lan in the western wing and carefully explained the situation to Auntie Lee. She then headed toward the main hall. Arriving at the main hall, she was shocked to find that aside from Gu Huaijiang, the other generals from the Gu family's army were also present. Yan Huasher and Lao Jin were all frowning. Seeing Yu Fu, they hesitated. Yu Fu greeted Gu Huaijiang first, then smiled and said to the others, What have you all come here for? The group remained silent, and the atmosphere was very odd. Yu Fu tentatively said, Could it be related to me? With her saying this, Lao Jin was the first to run out of patience. The matter of young miss giving His Majesty a beating has already started spreading around the capital. What would we do if a decree comes from the imperial palace proclaiming your guilt? Everyone's expressions were rather ugly. Even Gu Huaijiang's expression was solemn. Yu Fu, however, burst out laughing. This laughter left everyone confused. Yu Fu said, General Jin, if an imperial decree comes and detains me in the imperial family's prison, what do you plan on doing? Lao Jin opened his mouth but was stunned. After a long pause, he finally said, I came with my soldiers. If anyone dares to take young miss, we will definitely be able to stop them. What happens after you stop them? After stopping them, Lao Jin looked at Gu Huaijiang and then at Yan Huasher. After stammering for a while, he did not come up with anything. Yu Fu let out a sigh. I appreciate your concerns, but there's no need for this. So what if I hit His Majesty? It would be best if he did arrest me. Regardless of whether it's stripping me of my title or imprisoning me, at the very least, he can no longer appoint me empress. Isn't that right? The group finally understood after hearing this. It turned out that Yu Fu was thinking of doing this. Yan Huasher suddenly understood. It's no wonder young general had Yan Jing take those people to the morning market. He said that they would spread rumors about what happened last night, so it turned out that this was the plan. Thinking about it like this, even if Ning Qingji did not want to punish Yu Fu, he would have no choice but to punish her to save face. This was a good plan. It just seemed a little risky. Lao Jin anxiously said, "What do we do if, in a fit of rage, His Majesty decides that he wants young Miss Life? Wouldn't that make it not worth it?" This was what everyone was most worried about. Yu Fu looked up toward the top and winked at Gu Huaijiang. The latter finally spoke up, "It won't reach that point. Yu Fu is a princess who was conferred her title by the late emperor. More importantly, she has the deity of medicine as a pillar of support. Even if His Majesty won't give face to my Marquis Gu's manner, he will show consideration to the deity of medicine. It's just that we don't know what sort of punishment it will be." Yu Fu quickly approached him and comforted him as if comforting a child. "There won't be any real punishment. Not to mention my status, but even if I did give him a beating, I participated in protecting him. If he severely punished someone who was instrumental in protecting him, won't it chill the hearts of the people?" What she said was reasonable. Though Gu Huaijiang was worried, the situation had already progressed past the point of no return. "You've matured and have your own ideas. I should not hold you back, but you must remember that no matter what happens, your life is most important. Everything else is secondary. Do you understand?" Yu Fu quickly said, "What sort of thing is head general saying? A father should teach his daughter. It shouldn't be called restraint." Gu Huaijiang was stunned. He had always claimed to the outside world that Yu Fu was his adopted daughter, but the truth was that Yu Fu had never called him father. He had always thought that Yu Fu had some reservations and did not want to call him father. Hearing this today was particularly heartwarming. "You have never called me father." I thought. Yu Fu did not know whether to laugh or cry. How should she explain this problem? When she first arrived at Marquis Gu's manor, she had been forced to leave Immortals Valley, and she did not want to implicate Marquis Gu's manor in matters that she had not taken care of. After the troubles were resolved, because she liked Gu Shubai, she could not call him father. She was hoping to address him in this way after the marriage, but, for now, she did not think that Gu Huaijiang would misunderstand and think that she had some reservations. In front of so many people, it was hard for her to say it, thus she said, "In my heart, you have always been my father. This was true in the past, it is true now, and it will continue to be true. It's just that eldest brother and I are engaged, so how can I call you this now?" Gu Huaijiang was stunned but quickly came to an understanding. A suspicious blush appeared on his face. Right, a daughter must be reserved. It can't be done. He was Gu Shubai's father and Yu Fu's future father-in-law. She could only call him father after the marriage happened. Yu Fu saw that he understood and quickly said, "Head General, please restrain the generals. When His Majesty sends people to deliver the decree, you must not stop them. Once you do stop them, you would be guilty of the crime of opposing an imperial decree." She was not afraid of a decree coming. She was afraid that one would not come. Gu Huaijiang was consoled to the point of being in a daze and immediately nodded, "Don't worry." He then looked at the others. Opposing imperial decrees is not the way of the Gu family's army. Regardless of what decree comes later, you must not stop them. Everyone, when they had been talking about opposing the decree earlier, Gu Huaijiang had not said a word. Why was it that he immediately changed his mind after being coaxed by Yu Fu? Husband is truly proud. Husband is truly proud. The decree did not arrive until the sun was high in the sky. Everyone knew that Yu Fu intended to go against this overwhelming enemy, but they watched Eunuch Chi enter with the imperial decree. Eunuch Chi was the highest-ranked aide to the throne, and he usually only went out to deliver rewarding imperial decrees. As for handing out punishments, Eunuch Chi would never go and would leave those to the lower-ranked palace servants. Could it be that he did not come to deliver a punishment? Princess Zhenjiang to receive the decree. Everyone stepped forward to receive the decree and heard Eunuch Chi say, in accordance with His Majesty's decree, when attacked by assassins from Jianghu during our excursion out of the palace last night, Princess Zhenjiang acted quickly and put herself in danger to protect us, and we are grateful. As a result, the reward shall be a basket of brilliant pearls, 10 precious ornaments, and 20 pieces of jade. This is His Majesty's way of showing his gratitude toward his loyal subjects. Everyone felt extremely conflicted. They did not know if they should be happy or disappointed. They both hoped that Yu Fu would be able to avoid being appointed empress and were worried that Yu Fu would be punished. It was hard to say if this was a good outcome or a bad one. Yu Fu looked disappointed. Without accepting the decree, she stood up and said, "The ones who put themselves in danger to protect His Majesty were eldest brother and third brother, not me. Why did His Majesty's decree not mention them?" Eunuch Chi frowned and thought to himself that His Majesty not handing down a punishment was already good enough. He did not think that the princess would try to ask for more. He thought for a moment and then said with a smile, "Princess, how can a servant guess at what the meaning behind His Majesty's imperial decree? The ones who fought against the assassins last night were the eldest young sir and third young sir, but the one who remained by His Majesty's side was Princess. Eunuch means to say that our contributions are shared by everyone. Our contributions are Yu Fu's contributions, so there's no need to differentiate." Gu Shubai's voice came from the gate, and everyone turned to look. The young sirs of Marquis Gu's manor had come. Eunuch Chi's smile turned ugly. He could agree with what Gu Shubai had said, but he could not refute it in front of everyone. Yu Fu sneered, "His Majesty acted frivolously with this younger sister, and I gave him a beating. How would that matter be handled?" Eunuch Chi wore an awkward expression, thinking back to Ning Qingji's bruised face and how he lay in bed and gave these orders. "Though we were given a beating by Yu Fu, we were the one in the wrong. No, it's all that damn imperial consort Li's fault, actually daring to deceive us. Go and forbid imperial consort Li from coming for 3 months. No, half a year." Eunuch Chi could not bear to see him in pain. While ordering the imperial physicians to give him medicine, he said, "Then how should Princess Zhenjiang's side be dealt with?" Ning Qingji gritted his teeth and allowed the imperial physicians to apply the medicine. After a moment of silence, he said, "No punishment, she should be given a grand reward. Reward her for saving our life. As for hitting us, don't bring it back up. If anyone dares to bring it up in court, they shall lose our favor." He gritted his teeth, grimaced, and screamed, while the imperial physicians were too afraid to apply the medicine. Eunuch Chi had no choice but to accept and hand down the decree as instructed. He pulled himself out of his thoughts and cupped his hands toward Yu Fu, saying, "Princess, His Majesty will not worry about this matter. Will you continue to worry about it? You must know that giving His Majesty a beating is a severe crime." He looked toward the room. The people from Marquis Gu's manor and the generals from the Gu family's army were all present. There were some things that should not be said in front of so many people, but he did not have time to worry about that right now. "Princess, just remember how His Majesty feels about you. Since ancient times, how many people have struck a ruler and been rewarded rather than punished? His Majesty has treated Princess so earnestly, yet Princess isn't the slightest bit moved." Yu Fu looked at him with a frown. She had always thought that he was someone who fawned over people and was worse than the late emperor's eunuch Gao. Today, she saw him speak earnestly. He said that Ning Qingji was treating her with sincerity. Yu Fu stood there and was neither aggressive nor meek. Eunuch Qi calmed down a little. He figured that in the end, Yu Fu was still a girl. How could she be so cruel as to completely ignore Ning Qingji's sincerity? People were not plants. No matter what, there would be at least some emotions. Everyone's gaze landed on Yu Fu. Lao Jin quietly prodded Yan Huasher. In truth, His Majesty really treats our young miss well. Don't you think? He thought that he had kept his voice down, but everyone in the hall could hear him. Yan Huasher shot a desperate glare at him and desperately wanted to toss him out. Nobody would think you're a mute if you didn't talk. Old Yan. Lao Jin initially wanted to discuss this matter with him but suddenly saw Gu Shubai stand there with his lips slightly pursed. His expression looked a little ugly. He felt nothing but regret and immediately shut his mouth. Yu Fu looked behind Eunuch Qi. Are those the rewards that His Majesty gave me? Eunuch Qi thought that she was moved and quickly had the palace servant bring the treasures forward for Yu Fu to look at. That's right, Princess. These are all gifts that His Majesty is rewarding you with. Does Princess like them? Yu Fu's eyes shone from the glow of the brilliant pearls and the gems of various colors. They were colorful and exquisite. She faintly smiled and stepped toward a yellow chessboard with jade pieces. She could not help but reach out and feel it. These are all treasures, but I don't like any of them. She waved her hand decisively, dropping the chessboard to the ground and shattering the jade into small pieces. The palace servants retreated in shock, while Eunuch Qi stared at Yu Fu wide-eyed. He never thought that Yu Fu would be so resolute. Yu Fu jutted out her chin. I don't like any of these things. If Eunuch Qi insists on sending them, I will smash them all. Based on Eastern Ling's laws, what is the punishment for breaking something given by the imperial family? Everyone in Marquis Gu's manor knew the answer to this question. When the late emperor was still alive, he would send the most gifts to Marquis Gu's manor. Yu Fu looked at Qian, who was standing next to the gate, and the latter stepped forward, bowed, and then said, a commoner would be sentenced to death, and though princess status is noble, you would need to be imprisoned as punishment. Qi Zhou worriedly glanced at his father and quietly sighed. Yu Fu randomly picked up another jade trinket and smashed it on the ground and then provocatively looked at Eunuch Qi. Eunuch Qi, as an aide to the throne, will you just watch me destroy the rewards that His Majesty has granted me? Eunuch Qi's hands trembled. As someone who served the throne, he had seen many things, but this was the first time that he had seen something like this. He remembered how Ning Qingji lay in bed and cried out in pain, but he also remembered the way that he had looked when ordering him to reward Yu Fu. He had found a foundation to work from and gave Yu Fu a smile that was uglier than a crying face. Princess, please smash them as you see fit. His Majesty gave those rewards to Princess. Princess can do with them as Princess sees fit. This was originally given as a present because it looked nice, but if Princess likes hearing the sound of them being smashed, please feel free to smash them. As long as Princess is happy, that shall be the item's purpose. Lao Jin looked at Eunuch Qi with a grimace. This was the first time that he had seen someone so shameless. This manner of currying favor was truly unique. If the aides to the throne were like this, it was clear just how tolerant Ning Qingji was of Yu Fu. Yu Fu had infuriated Eunuch Qi and decided to take decisive action. Servants, come and smash all of these items and then scatter them outside. Let the people of Eastern Ling see how benevolent His Majesty is. Eunuch Qi's heart nearly stopped when seeing her smash just 2 items. If he continued to watch, he might just pass out on the spot. As long as Princess is happy, that's all that matters. This servant will be going. Eunuch Chi quickly saluted and left without looking back. Before leaving, he covered his ears. He was afraid to hear the sound of Yu Fu smashing those treasures. Each and every one of those treasures was worth a fortune. Just smashing them like that was criminal, absolutely criminal. Once Eunuch Chi left, everyone fell silent. Chi gritted his teeth and stepped forward to ask for instructions. Master, young miss, should we really smash these items? Gu Huaijiang looked at Yu Fu, and Yu Fu was clearly at a loss over what to do. That was why she had resorted to such drastic measures to reject Ning Qingji, but Ning Qingji was far more determined than any of them had expected. She had wanted to smash these items and place them outside the manor. It was not to show the people how benevolent His Majesty was but to show everyone her resolution. She said that she would not marry him and would continue to say that. There was no room for negotiation. Head General, young miss, how about we forget about it? If this annoys His Majesty, what if he really? Lao Jin was the first to speak up to try and dissuade them, while Yan Huasher and the others remained silent. They were thinking the same thing. However, Gu Yi said, smash them. Why not smash them? Little Yu Fu has already done it, yet His Majesty continues to shamelessly want to marry her. If these things aren't smashed, everything that she has done will have been for nothing. Gu Xiang also agreed with him, they should be smashed. If they aren't smashed, could it be that she needs to kill the ruler to avoid becoming the empress? The idea of killing the ruler was far too serious. Like a sharp needle, it pierced through everyone's minds. Qian was troubled one way or the other, as he looked between Gu Huaijiang and Yu Fu. Gu Huaijiang finally spoke after a long pause, do as the young miss said. There's no need to worry. This sort of decision was incisive and resolute. It was hard to say what sort of discussion it would stir up in court and among the people, thus the end result would be hard to foresee. Marquis Gu's manor had never done something this publicly before, as Gu Huaijiang always kept a low profile. This time, for the sake of Yu Fu, he was willing to change his way of doing things. Yu Fu was very moved. Lao Jin and the others left without seeing a decree of Yu Fu's punishment. After they left, Yu Fu suddenly dropped to her knees in front of Gu Huaijiang. Everyone was given a shock, and Gu Shubai immediately stepped forward to support her, but Yu Fu politely refused. Head General, I have some things to say. Gu Huaijiang said, if you have something to say, stand up to say it. Our family doesn't have any rules about speaking while kneeling. Yu Fu thought for a bit then slowly stood up with Gu Shubai's help. Head General, I want to move out of Marquis Gu's manor. When I was little, didn't you give me a residence? It's the one next to West Lake. I want to move there. How can that be allowed? Gu Xiang and Gu Yi were the first to cry out. Gu Huaijiang had been expecting that she would say this and was not shocked. That's impossible. A day as a daughter of Marquis Gu's manor means that you will always be a daughter of Marquis Gu's manor. How could we allow you to move out? More importantly, did you think that doing this would mean that Marquis Gu's manor would avoid being implicated? Yu Fu had indeed wanted to avoid implicating everyone else, especially after she had given Ning Qingji a beating last night. She had also smashed the treasures gifted to her by the throne. The conflict was escalating, and it could no longer be controlled. There could only be one outcome to this situation. She would rather die than obey, as she continued to anger Ning Qingji until he finally decided that he wanted to kill her. Following this route, Marquis Gu's manor would inevitably be placed in danger, and this was a situation that Yu Fu wanted to avoid. Gu Shubai said, Yu Fu, you have been a part of Marquis Gu's manor since long ago. How can family talk about being implicated or not being implicated? Could it be that you have never thought of us as family? That's right. Yu Fu, no matter what, we won't let you move out on your own. You need to have faith in father and eldest brother. They will definitely be able to think of something to dissuade His Majesty. Everyone did their best to try and persuade Yu Fu when they suddenly heard a ruckus outside of Marquis Gu's manor. Gui strode toward the gate. What's going on? Why is there such a commotion outside? The servant entered and reported, replying to sixth young sir, Steward Chi took those treasures outside and smashed them. The citizens are currently gathered around to discuss it. This quickly. Yu Fu and Gu Shubai exchanged a look. I'll go out to take a look. Gu Shubai followed close behind her, and everyone followed them out. Before they could step out of the gate, they heard the citizens' discussions. How criminal, how absolutely criminal, truly, truly such a pity. Yu Fu felt a little lonely, raising her head to look at Gu Shubai. It is a bit of a pity. Those treasures were innocent. How great would it have been if they had been given as alms to the poor, but Gu Shubai hugged her. His hug was filled with a comforting feeling. He consoled her, saying, I know that you did not want to smash those things. You just wanted to make your stance clear. His Majesty is relentlessly pursuing you, so you had no choice but to make this decision. This can't be blamed on you. You can't blame yourself. Do you understand? Yu Fu nodded. I want to go and hand out porridge to the poor tomorrow. For destroying those treasures, I should do something to make up for it. Gu Shubai patted her head with a smile. Then when you usually do something wrong, do you always go and give alms to the old people selling food or the aunties with weak legs selling flowers? Yu Fu knew that he was comforting her and awkwardly smiled. Gu Yi ran out of the manor and then returned. Little Yu Fu, don't feel bad. Go outside and listen to what everyone is saying. Yu Fu had already heard it. Everyone was talking about the shattered treasures, and they felt that Yu Fu smashing them was very criminal. Gu Yi pulled her outside. Listen carefully. Listen. People gathered around Marquis Gu's manor to look at the shattered treasure pieces outside. There were small vendors that had stalls nearby, there were citizens that lived nearby, and there were people that happened to be passing by. How criminal! Our princess is such a good girl that anyone would want to marry her, but it has to be said that first come first served. That's right. It's a pity that everyone in Marquis Gu's manor is so loyal, yet His Majesty still wants to steal their fiancé. It's truly absurd. Isn't that criminal? I heard that His Majesty doesn't just disrespect the late emperor, but he even favors villains while casting someone as loyal as Lord Marquis Gu to the side. The citizens whispered and discussed various matters. After Qian finished smashing the items, he ordered everyone to return to the manor. One young man dressed in plain clothes shouted at him, Princess is great. This is the Princess Zhenjiang of Eastern Ling whom we respect. That's right. Princess has made great contributions to Eastern Ling. During the battle with Western Kuan last year, without Princess traveling a great distance to the border, it's hard to say if we would have won or lost. Qian was stunned, turning around and cupping his hands toward the person who had just spoken. This was a sign of accepting their kind intentions. Yu Fu stood inside the gate and blankly listened to the citizens' discussions. She could not help but dive into Gu Shubai's arms and tightly hug him. Eldest brother, did you hear what they're saying? I did. Gu Shubai faintly smiled. Our Yu Fu is so beloved by the people. Husband is truly proud. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.